Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we are back. And in this video, we're going to be reading the comments of another video. I haven't done something like this in a while, but I always love doing it because it gives me the opportunity to reply in way more depth and hopefully spur a second conversation out of comments that were left on a video. So if you're new to the channel here, what we try to do here is have a conversation, and I love reading every comment and replying to every single comment. So it's always maybe a little shocking when I don't reply, as you see here, to all these comments. There's a lot of comments on this video. This is a topic that is very heated in WoW. It's kind of died down a bit, I guess. At the time, it was crazy. People were literally making threads on it every single day, and it was causing a lot of action to be taken on the forum. So it's about the Covenant issues. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's a good video, I think. I think I laid it out very well for both sides of the argument, and I think I made a compelling case, for either direction that you feel like the game could go with Covenants. So we'll see how it goes. But one way or the other today, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the actual comments. So let's get to it. I did reply to a couple before I thought, oh, I should definitely do that for this video. I used to do it all the time for the tier list, but let's get right into it. So we have a comment from Corkron. Everyone that plays WoW should listen to you specifically, or especially on the things you pointed out in this video. Your mindset is what I would call a good player that most people should have a good time playing with and learning from a person like you. Take care. Can do. So what did I say? Thanks for saying so. Hope we can reach as many as possible channels. Yeah, so I appreciate it. A couple of these comments are just, very general like that. But, one thing I will say is that I do hope that people listen to a variety of different people when they're trying to form an opinion. I feel like that's the number one mistake that a lot of people make. They just go to whoever their favorite streamer or influencer is, and they just whatever they say they agree with. And I feel like I'm the only person who doesn't do that. And I know there's a lot more people out there who don't, but I feel like I'm one of the only people who do that. Like when I'm trying to learn something, I'm trying to learn from like 5 to, maybe 10, all these different types of opinions and thought processes. And it goes for rating too. Like when we're rating, I never just look at one video and be like, this is exactly how we're going to do it. I always try to see like 7 or 8 different people doing a fight and be like, why are they doing it that way? Or what can we learn from why they're dying or why something happened, So anyway, just not really related to the comment. Thanks a lot, Corkround, for the comment. But anyway, Dan Boone, I've been watching way more Twitch than I ever cared to during this beta, and I think you're spot on about the toxic social circle. Also surprised how many of these so-called elite players are so uninformed about aspects of their class, other classes, game systems, or dungeons themselves. It seems like a lot of doing high keys is just being in the clique and gatekeeping by sweaty nerds. It's a shame it filters down to the majority of the player base. So I actually replied to this one. A lot of players aren't as good as they think they are, for sure. They're just able to succeed because they play a ton with friends who play a ton and have high confidence. An above average player with a good support system and willingness to never stop progressing is what dominates this game now. In the old days, it took a lot more than that. And what I'm referring to there is like, being socially cohesive, not just being like elitist to the nth degree and we're better than everyone else. Like that's what I mean by high confidence, right? Like if you believe that you're the best player in the game, it does help. Like honestly, you know what I mean? Like you can walk into a scenario and think like everybody else is the problem. I'm never the problem. And you can succeed that way because that level of confidence is going to cause you to keep pushing yourself. But it's not realistic. It's not how the real world works either. You know what I mean? Unless you're actually skilled at something, you can't just lie your way through it. So a lot of people in WoW, I do feel like are in that boat where they're kind of, above average. They're good. They can play a ton. They have no other responsibilities. And they're almost, and what I meant by the toxic social circle thing, I talked about it in this video. But what I mean by that specifically is that like, there's this like very inclusive, like almost, I would say it's almost toxic about how people react to those who are and are not in their social circle. And this happens a lot on Twitch. Like if you go on, a streamer's page, you'll see that if anything gets brought up that is like dubious or questionable, everybody is immediately like spamming faces that are meant to make them look like they're laughing or something like that. You know what I mean? Like if it's, there can't possibly be a second opinion. You know what I'm saying? And this happens a lot on the internet, but I feel like Twitch, it doesn't happen anywhere more than Twitch. It's ridiculous how many times you go into a stream and there's not actual conversations going on. It's just pure circle jerk with faces and no words, and everybody is just, absolutely sure that everything that the person they're doing, the person they're watching do, I don't know, the person who they're watching is doing it perfectly. There's no possible learning, there's no second guessing. He's mastered everything he could master, so there's no reason to even consider something else. And that happens a lot when I'm talking about tanks too. So that's the main reason why I wanted to do the tank coverage here, because I wanted people to understand that there's a variety of factors at play when you pick a class, and hopefully fun is number one for you, but it's more than just that. And I think if you you asked somebody who's like at the upper echelon of gameplay what they are interested in, it's going to be completely different than what somebody even at my tier would be interested in, or even at the level that anybody else is playing at. So it's very important to understand that, and I don't feel like you can have that conversation when you're just posting faces. Like, I don't know when this became a thing, but it's like we're not interested in actually using words anymore. We're not interested in thinking or articulating thought process. It's just emotes. That's it. So anyway, Dan actually had a great comment. That's why I replied. That was actually the first comment I replied to, because when I saw that, I knew I had a lot to talk about on this topic. Anyway, Kinsman, really, really, really well said. You've got me way less concerned about covenants than I was previously. And that's great. I mean, sure. I wasn't trying to make anybody... Let's put it this way. I did make this video because I wanted to try to change a bunch of people's minds, which, obviously is going to happen if you make a video and you speak compelling. It's going to change some people's minds. But that's almost the opposite. That's almost the reason that we're in this position in the first place. You know what I mean? People who have this affluence about them, they kind of tell you what to think, and then you don't think of it yourself. So one way or the other, I think I did the fairest job I could, but then there's a reply. And realistically, this is actually a good reply. You're one of the people he was talking about that listens to others instead of working things out for yourself. And I kind of agree with that. Not that Kinsman specifically is it, but it's just like, I would hope that when you watch this video, you're not like, oh, I completely changed my opinion on this topic because this guy said I should. So it's like, just don't do that. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, the covenants are a problem and will be for the whole expansion. Their restrictiveness to play your off specs is the main reason. Said the same so first of all, let's break that down. I totally agree that the off spec situation is going to be a problem, but just totally disagree that it's actually a problem. The problem is that if you want to switch between off specs, it's not possible. And that's not necessarily fair to the class. I feel like that's very it's not like that in many other situations in WoW. Let's put it that way. But besides the off spec thing, I think we laid everything else out and, made a pretty good case to say that most of it's just player perception and community issue, not actually in-game issues that, actually matter mathematically or even even theoretical in any way. It's all just player issues. The game is not tuned to be hard enough for that to matter. And realistically, you could extrapolate that to say it's the same way for off specs. But the problem is when you're playing an off spec, you're often thinking in a different, if I was to play Frost Death Knight, I would not want the same stuff as Blood Death Knight. Like it's even though it's the same class, it is a different spec, and it makes it feel very different when you play it. So I could totally understand why people would not like that, but it's not a tuning thing for me, even though it is for some. It's more about I can't customize my off spec because my main spec is too important to me. But it is a decision they have to make, and that's what agency is. Anyway, I said the same for Azerite armor and the whole of BFA, which is completely... I don't want to hear anybody complain about Azerite armor. Not once Residium came into the game. In the beginning, season 1, it was a mess. Once you had Residium, there's no... I don't want to hear it. Anyway, when Shadowlands launches and a few months in, there is apathy. The joy of saying I told you so will be bitter because I don't want to be apathetic. It benefits me and anyone that plays WoW as an MMO for people to continue playing. I'm not really sure. I'm probably missing the point here, but I think he's saying that he knows it's not going to go well. So trying to make it sound like it can go well is just counterproductive. And if that's the point, I obviously disagree. Like I said in the video, most of it's community perception. So, like 70 to 80% of it's community perception. So stop worrying about what other people think of you and start playing the game for fun. You'll have a lot more fun. You'd be surprised. Anyway, Nick Van Petten. You made me think about this in a new way. Thanks for your perspective. That is, might as well just, we're done. The video's over. Thanks for watching. No, I mean, that is the reason I made the video. It's just so people would start thinking about it in a different way, because everybody out, so many people are just trying to jam this, just throw this opinion, 99 miles an hour fastball coming right at your face. They're trying to hit you in the head with this. Like, if you can't go any other direction, you have to believe them. This is going to harm the game. You have to focus on changing it. Let's stop making the expansion. Fix this right now. That's basically what these people are saying, and they're trying to do. And it's extremely selfish, like beyond. So I've never seen anything more selfish happen from a group of people playing a game on elective, right? Like, here's the money. You give me the server, I will play your game. That's what this is, right? They're choosing to play video. It's not like IRL, like politics and shit. IRL gets heated like this, and people try to force their opinions on people. That makes sense, because you have no way to unbind yourself from real life. You know what I mean? But you're choosing to play a video game, and you're trying to force them to make the game the way you want. That is amoral. I have no zero. I say this a lot. I have no respect, but no, I have zero respect for that. Anybody who is spamming the forums, trying to force their opinion on the developers and claiming that there's going to be, catastrophe and fallout from them not fixing this, is just very, very, very selfish. And you're doing yourself and the game a huge disservice if you can't at least admit that there's other people who will enjoy it as it is, and that you'd be screwing them over by forcing Blizzard to change it. Let them make their own decisions. If the time comes and it doesn't work, they will make adjustments. You could say like this guy, you could say, I told you so all you want. That's fine. It's still their game to make and their game to learn from. So there you go. Anyway, Devin D's. I always really appreciate your perspective on these topics. As someone who appreciates and watches metagaming, World First Race, Push Weeks, and MDI, I think the community that has surrounded these aspects of the game have grown to be really toxic and ultimately skew how they themselves and the community at large view these systems, because how they might impact the metagamers they follow on Twitch. Really, this is a great summary of everything we talked about, honestly. And I hate to use the word toxic because it's so overblown. What I want to say here is it's very inclusive. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't say it's toxic, but these communities have developed, like, if they're like very insecure with their own success IRL. That's the only way I could. The descriptions of the way people communicate with each other and describe the situations they're in makes me believe that if they did not have this, they would have nothing else. And that's what I said in the first video, is that there's people playing this game who are like trapped in the game. They can't get out of it. They don't play it willingly. They don't play it electively. They play it because this is the only outlet they have. They're frustrated. Without it, they would be hopelessly frustrated by the real life scenarios they're in. And it sounds like very stupid to say this, and like maybe you think I'm talking down to these people, but like, this is just genuinely how I read it. Like, when you're trying to like act this way about a video game, all it takes is like, you press keys. That's it, man. I tell you what, man, golf has changed my entire perspective on gaming. I used to always have this opinion anyway, but now it's completely, the opposite is just completely erased from my mind. And you know what I mean? And that's a very clear example too. If you go, you see like a top golfer or somebody who's like considerably better than me, they would never even think about acting the way that WoW players who are in that position do to those below them. It's completely different. When you actually do things that are difficult, mechanically require a lot of mental energy, a lot of physical energy, then you start to appreciate what it means to not be good at them. You remember the days when you had to work your way up. And these people aren't in that. They don't have that. And the only reason I could think that is because they're, above, like I said, above average. They have tons of free time to play the game. And then this is so encircling their lives now at this point that anything that will even remotely endanger them from being like above average, you know what I mean, has to be completely eradicated. It's very scary. It really is, because it does hurt the game for sure. And he said it. Devin said it great. how it might, first of all, I agree with the fact that it might also not impact the game. But anyway, yeah, it's gonna the overall like maybe social sphere is worried about how viewing this is going to look, in 2021. So I don't know. It's just so weird to me. And then yeah, he brought it anyway. Okay, so Seismical, what's up, man? Glad to see you. Let's see. He says TLDR. You're right. People just need to learn to have fun with maximizing their own choices, i.e., ineffable on DK, which I regret ever shunning in any capacity. You regret it now, but you didn't regret it then. That's the problem. The conversation I brought up about ineffable truth wasn't just Seismical, but a couple other people that I know or don't know who know me apparently. Were very they're not very happy that I was doing that. Let's put it that way. So anyway, regardless, not here to talk about that. There will continue to always be the most optimal pick for any scenario you may find yourself in. However, I'm in large agreement with this video. Downing the boss comes down to more than how many numbers I am putting out on Warcraft logs. So many more optimal decisions for people to make outside of whatever the sim says. However, not swapping will hurt individuals who like multiple content forms because those are completely different worlds. But I'm sure there will be things to mitigate the impact in coming time. Right. So great, great analysis. Totally, obviously agree. But yeah. So what he's saying here is that I actually brought him up specifically in the video because of a conversation we had about him playing Fire Mage on Carapace and N'Zoth, where using your combustion on the tentacle things was the best way to maximize your DPS, or the other way around, I guess. But anyway, regardless, the point is that if you're actually serious about succeeding, it takes more than just you to do something. You know what I mean? So all these people who are so worried about not being able to make individual decisions are just endemic of a problem that is not success. Like, let's put it that way. You know what I mean? They're not succeeding because of the way they are. They're just succeeding because of the things I brought up before, where they're able to play, regardless. I don't want to keep bringing that up, but and then obviously totally agree. Not being able to swap easily will hurt individuals who like multiple content forms because those are completely different worlds, but so will playing a Shadow Priest in Mythic Plus. Like we talked about in the video, this is the decision that you make. If you want to play a Shadow Priest, you realize that they're not great in some type of content. You want to play a Blood DK, you realize that they're not great in some scenarios. And then Blizzard tries to rectify that in small ways, but it's important to have these niches. And it actually got brought up during BFA. And that's why I'm sure most people, that's why I believe most people are in this position now, because they probably didn't understand it coming through BFA. They probably didn't pay attention to this, but Ian talked a lot about this with Shaman and other classes too, about how, Shaman's niche is to not have good mobility. Like he actually said those, like not word for word, but that sentiment was conveyed that like, no, it's part of their niche to be weaker in some areas. The problem is, of course, maybe they're weak in too many areas, but regardless, that's how you design a game. You know what I mean? If everything was the exact same, you'd be playing a different game. So, all right, Storm Rage. People expect to have it all and to be able to change it for different scenarios. It is like me playing a paladin and I want to fill all three roles at the same time. Sure, depending what you pick, you may be stronger in AoE as DPS, but weaker in single target with certain covenants, but that's the point. Glad somebody gets it. You go for AoE if you run Mythic Plus as main activity. That does not mean you can't raid, and honestly, if difference in power is like 5%, does it matter for heroic raiding? Everyone acts like they are Mythic first raiders. I get it why high key runners are pissed off, but don't think you are some super Mythic Plus player if you clear 15. Telling this to all, not me. He's talking to, yeah. People just search for a new thing to hate on. It affects me too, since I DPS and raids and tank, but I can handle it. Tank and Mythic Plus. If raid leader benches you for heroic raid when you are doing 5% less damage, then others say warriors search for new guild. That one sucks and a little hard to follow. But yeah, realistically, overall message here is that this is all a social situation for everybody but the people who are at the absolute bleeding edge. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise, you're just doing the best you can. You've already made concessions that you don't probably consciously even realize you've made. Like I said, playing Shadow Priest, this is the best example I can give, because there's times when it's absolutely bombastically good, and then there's times where it's freaking terrible, but yet people still play it, and they don't switch every fight. You know what I mean? That's my point. So Yeah, and this will not be like that. It's possible that it is now, but you got to believe that they will fix it over time. You can't keep just shouting it down and assuming that they're incapable of making the game properly. Okay, so I don't want to click this now because I don't want anything to happen audio wise, but he says that part in the video made it for me. I think what it was, I think we've just talked about it actually. So anyway, I've been trying to get this message across to people for ages, even had to cut some of our raiders because the pressure they were trying to apply to my members. Thank you, man. This whole video was distinctly put, and I'm really happy that there's more of us out there. That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's probably maybe the thing that it's the biggest like up and down that I've ever dealt with as a raid leader too, as a guild master. Like, I want everybody who is in the raid to feel like they can raid and have fun on the class that they're playing. And as soon as I try to force people into playing a spec that they don't enjoy, it just immediately deafens them. Like, it really does. I don't know. It really makes things worse, like automatically. So yeah, I don't think anybody should ever feel like they should be absolutely forced to play a certain way unless you're doing everything you possibly can to set the bleeding edge, which, let's be realistic, nobody here in this comment section is doing that. No offense. It's just true. It's just the facts. Like, I'm not doing it, and I doubt anybody else is. You know what I mean? And you being like, doing like 25s either. That's not it either. You know what I mean? Sure, it's pretty hard, and you probably have to maximize yourself, but still, you're still not the best player in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the only level that matters. And that matters at that level because it's not them versus the game anymore. They're no longer going out and playing 18 holes of golf to see if they can break their record. They're going out to beat the other team. You know what I mean? They're now in a tournament, a golf tournament. You understand? I love the example with golf, man. I tell you, it's the best thing I ever did playing golf again. Anyway, Frank Drebin, I love the name, by the way. Hey, Metro, as a longtime viewer of your streams, I really appreciate your thoughtful words on the topic. From my point of view, your arguments hit the nail on the head. One thing still bothers me, and I may be wrong here. Watching your runs in Mythic Plus, I see the same classes over and over again, and you too choose those classes if you make your own group. That Affliction, yeah, there was a run that we had a few weeks prior to this where there was Affliction Warlock in the group. It was funny. Anyway, no criticism here, and you may correct me if I'm wrong. My point is that no one can exclude himself for having a certain class perception concerning its power. Covenants determine that power to a certain degree. Reality will be if you don't choose the best covenant for your spec, it will be a lot harder to participate in a part of the game because people won't invite you. Sad, but that's the way it works, and there is not much fun to that. Keep up your good work and your approach to the game. See you soon on stream. Frank, great comment. We're going to dissect this one heavily because, first of all, it just hits on so many great points. So yeah, he's talking about I'm talking about how the game should be played at a fun first type stance, like everything we talked about in the previous video. But then at the same point, I do not want feral druids or, I guess, Affliction Warlock, a variety of things that we talked about in BFA over the expansion. I have a pre-existing bias on those too. So he's right. It's never going to go away. But that doesn't mean that the game should change. Like, do we understand that? What I'm talking about, and this I think is why so few people understand or align with my opinions on a lot of topics in the game, because I'm not thinking about what it means for me as a player. I'm thinking about what it means for the game from the development standpoint. And I don't know why I got into that thought process. Like, I've been like this for a while now. I'm thinking like, what would be the direction I would take the game if I was developing it? This is the direction. And everybody's like, that's not the right direction. It's like, well, for you as a person, it might not be, but for the game, when you have millions of people all at different skill levels, that's the direction we're going to take it. And I don't think a lot of people think that way. So like for me as a Blood Death Knight pugging Mythic Plus, I don't want a Feral Druid in the key. But if you love Feral Druid, then you can still play Feral Druid and have success. You know what I mean? You're going to have to overcome some people's perception. But screw them. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, if you're a Feral Druid and you hate me, good. You should hate me. You know what I mean? Like, it's mostly a meme at this point. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it's like, you should feel that way. You know what I mean? That helps you get better. You have something to prove, man. It's easier to be the underdog. It's easier to have something to prove because you're going to, like, naturally want to succeed more than if you're at the top. I'm playing a Fire Mage. This is so easy. I don't even have to try. Then you just play worse. Anyway, He says, reality will be, if you don't choose the best covenant for your spec, it will be a lot harder to participate in a part of the game because people won't invite you. This is just not true. I mean, regardless, like, let's put it this way. It's going to happen, but it doesn't matter because those people are idiots. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, do I want to be in a group with idiots? Maybe sometimes, but realistically, I don't care. You know, like they're not skilled or thoughtful enough for me to give any thought to their opinion. So if they don't want me, it's like, oh, well, that sucks. But who cares? Just move on. Find the new group. Start your own group. That's what I did. Started my own guild because I couldn't get into a guild on our server. Literally, I should tell this story one time. I couldn't get into a guild on my server, and one of the guilds said to me, like, you'll never raid here. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to start my own guild then. That's how it all started. Anyway, so hey, whatever. But the whole situation about the best covenant for the spec is not like we're talking about a theoretical difference that should not matter. It might because of tuning, and that's Blizzard's problem, but it shouldn't. If they do what they're supposed to do, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter if I'm Venthyr or Night Fae. It's not going to make that big of a difference on our success. Like Sazmal said earlier, there's going to be way bigger differences. Like I go the wrong, I do something stupid. I play poorly. Nothing to do with the spells, nothing to do with the tuning of the spells. It's all about how you use the spells. So if I use the Venthyr Covenant better than the Necrolord Covenant, then it doesn't matter if the Necrolord Covenant is better. You know what I mean? That's why you should play the class that you enjoy the most too, because if you play a mage better than you play a hunter, but hunter is better than mage theoretically, they equal out. If I play this one 5% better, but this one's 5% better theoretically, then you've equaled out. You're now the better. You're now playing the better spec. You understand? So anyway, yeah, the whole not fun to get declined. Yeah, you just got to find better social circles. That's what the whole point of making this video was. So not an issue with the game, just an issue with people. Not something Blizzard needs to be doing anything about, unfortunately. Okay, Dread Priest. Love the icon there. It's like a skeleton and a sombrero. Well said, man. The only thing that really bothers me is aesthetics versus effectiveness. Just enough to not be declined in Marksman Plus. It's just really bad sometimes. Like, say, Kyrian have a shit plate transmog IMO. Necrolords have a cool one. They are also mega cool in terms of lore compared to boring Bastion. But hell, Necrolord Covenant ability and mediums are just total garbage. 20% shield per 2 minutes. Clea has a 10% shield every 5 seconds out of combat. Also 5% crit, useful heals. Necro have like lockpicking, 1% heal. Well, so I don't think that's, first of all, that's not a fair criticism to make. You're comparing the actual ability to a soulbind. I mean, let's put it this way. There is a lot of moving parts in the Covenant system, and that's very much intentional. We talked about this in the actual video. What they're trying to do is overwhelm you with options so that there cannot be one guaranteed best way. You know what I mean? That's what they're trying to do here. And it seems like it's working because you got a random commenter saying he's comparing like the actual active ability of the Covenant to a ability that's not even an ability. Like it's part of a passive in the Soulbind. So right, and then you're talking about like lockpicking. I'm sure that has there's utility ones for Clea as well. Like I'm not really sure what we're talking about here. If there's actually problems with tuning, that will continue to happen. But yeah, for the most part, we're talking about like a variety of different things in the system, and even the transmog thing too. It's like, yeah, that's all part of the decision. It's not just the ability. People need to understand that. That's what it means to pick something important. You have to weigh all the options. When you pick the class, I didn't pick it because I literally only ever want to use Deathstrike. That's not the reason I picked Blood DK. I like many things about it. You know what I mean? It's the class that has the most for me. Just like the Covenants. Which transmog, well, I don't really like the transmog, but I love the ability. Then I picked that one. You know what I mean? Anyway. Okay, Josh Yuto. As always, you provide such insightful and measured feedback. I feel like a lot of the sim meta culture proceeds from a scripted game where everything is on predetermined timers. I wish Blizzard would use their Torghast tech to create a Mythic Plus progression system with randomized generated dungeons with random layouts and bosses with random abilities, and tune difficulty to total deaths and not a timer. Sounds like you want Torghast. Anyway, give players an ability to progress in a system that cannot be simmed and does not value cookie cutter specs due to randomization factors. How can you sim spec for a boss whose abilities you don't know? It's fair enough. Just something to change the current ARP Diablo style system they lean on. Anyway, rant over. Thanks again, Metro, for all your looking out for the community. Hey, Josh, no problem, man. I'm doing it because I want to. But yeah, let's talk about this. So basically, so it's very interesting because this is actually what I wanted from Torghast. Basically, what he just described here is exactly what I wanted from Torghast. Like high difficulty with randomness and a lot of varying scenarios, but a lot of different ways you could overcome those varying scenarios. They got 2 out of the 3, right? They got the varying scenarios, and the anima powers are going to give you a lot of ways to overcome those varying scenarios. But from what I've done, it's not challenging, and it doesn't look like it's tuned to be challenging. Like it's almost like if they're like, well, if you want to spend 40 hours a week in here, you can, and it might eventually get challenging. But the most, like, let's put it this way. For me, it would be like if only to get the weekly rewards required a normal dungeon. That's the way Torghast feels. It's like, well, sure, I could do Mythic plus 20, but there's sometimes I just want to do a little bit of content. I don't have a ton of time to be doing like the best possible content that the game offers, and I want that little bit of content to still offer me a challenge. So it's like, for me, that doesn't feel like what Torghast's goal was. But either way, he brings up an amazing point. I feel like a lot of the sim metaculture proceeds from a scripted game where everything is predetermined, everything is on predetermined timers. And this is what I've been talking about for a while now, man. And this is why simming, quote unquote, like the theoretical element of the game, they just don't mix. Like me and them just don't mix. It doesn't make any sense. Like what happens to the sim when the tank dies? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do then? What's the most mathematically optimal way to continue without a tank in a 5-man? It's all out the window. You know what I mean? So there's things that matter in reality, and there's things that matter in sims. And you're never going to have that in a sim where a disaster happens and you have to save it somehow. You have to not give up the entire success because of one mistake. And that's just never going to be accounted for. So I still don't have any idea why people talk about sims when they're talking about playing World of Warcraft in 2020. It's like, yes, at one point, there was only one style of content, and it was against a single target, and maximizing your single target was about 80% of the challenge of it. And that's not the game anymore. We're not playing the same game anymore. You know what I mean? You could literally beat, like, this is the best example. Now, at the end of BFA, we're killing bosses like 2 or 3 minutes faster than our first kills. But we were able to kill it 3 minutes slower. So the fight's just not tuned out hard. You know what I mean? Like, it was never about the damage. I never understood why people are so focused on that. Anyway, Chobo, what's up? Another nice little, got a little dog with some little sunglasses. Anyway, Blizzard receives a lot of backlash whenever they make changes to the game's design philosophy. I remember Raid Finder being controversial when it was added, but getting rid of it now would be just as contentious as when they added it. That's a really good point. I think Covenants have the ability to change the game in a positive way if they can stick to it and make it the norm. The only problem I have with it is that it's a meaningful choice that we're going to throw away after Shadowlands. So it really doesn't seem that meaningful. That's a good point. It's funny to see people upset about Covenants watch a video about Ashes of Creation and get excited about their subclass system, which is functionally the same. That makes me think those people don't have a problem with the system itself. They just have an issues with changing their mindset in WoW. I'm going to say that's probably 50% of it. Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say that. I didn't really bring it up in the first video, but it's definitely that. Like, anybody, it's kind of scary to me because, let's put it this way. If this is another golf example, if Tiger Woods was to walk out there to a golf course and it wasn't laid out for his specifications, do you know what he's going to do? He's going to, him and his caddy, whoever the caddy is now, can't even remember, Joe LaCava, or is that, anyway, yeah, that's his name. Him and the caddy are going to figure out how to succeed. They're going to put a game plan together and they're going to do the best they can to succeed. It might not work out, and it hasn't much recently for him, but he's in his 40s and has major back surgery, so nobody should expect otherwise. But regardless, they're going to adapt to the challenge. That's what a skilled individual does. He controls the variables he can and does the best to outplay the ones he can't. That's not what happens in this community. It's freaking scary how the best players in the world cry, like embarrass themselves about how they, like, the amount of crying I've heard over the last 3 expansions. Well, basically, including Shadowlands, basically WoD and then everything else, right? So Legion, BFA, and Shadowlands. People are going constantly complaining about how difficult being the best at the game is. It's like, right, it's called being, that's what you do. You're competing. You have to excel. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to have 0 barrier to entry to being a freaking 160-hour-a-week player and being the best player in the world and being idolized. You know what I mean? It's not, you don't go to Walmart and buy that. You have to work for it. So it's whenever there's a slight change for that, these people they're not there with Joe LaCava thinking about, well, this 5 yards of wind that we didn't account for is going to change the swing. How do we approach it? They're like, for fuck's sake, nerf the wind. That's what they do. It's like, what are you talking about? Just get better. You're gonna get better. You're already really freaking good. Just get better. You know what I mean? That's it. So they don't want that to change. And I don't know. I think it's because they're not there for the right reasons. They're there because they're trapped in the game. It's what they've done for so long, and they don't feel like they can't find that release. They can't find that anywhere else. So they play this game out of habit and out of like almost being trapped by it, you know? And that's the complete opposite. I play this game out of passion. I play it every day looking to get better. And the times that I don't feel like I want to get better, I don't play it as often. That's just how it works, okay? So anyway, Marcus Havoc. Completely agree. People need to stop trying to be like that's a very low percentage. I don't think that exists of players that actually have to min-max. And one way or the other, the point here is that, yeah, you don't actually have to min-max if you're not in the top 4 or 5 guilds in the world. You don't have to. You want to, but that doesn't mean that Blizzard should also want you to. Do you understand that? Blizzard makes content that should be overcome, but they want you to have to work to overcome it. That's how it works. If they didn't, they would nerf it every time you, like every week the fight would get nerfed until you eventually kill it, right? If they wanted you to kill it as bad as you want to kill it, then it would get nerfed every week. It doesn't. They set a standard and you have to rise to that standard, okay? For 90% of players, the standard is not numerical. Not more than 90%. I mean, it's probably 99% realistically, but I hate that 1% thing because it does sound ridiculous. But for most players rating and doing PvE, they are not at a theoretical limitation numerically. It's just not the truth. It's just not the truth. Okay? You're limited by gameplay, poor decision making, your teammates, latency, anything else. But it's never going to be about your theoretical output. And that's what this is about. You know what I mean? They don't want that. They want it to be... anyway, we've talked about this. Let's move on. Wesley Donaldson. That's Grev. What's up, my friend? Anyway, stacking system after system, this expansion will be confusing at first, but that is the fun of an MMO. For my playstyle and ability, will be fun to learn and see what choices I can come up with. We have 2 years of Shadowlands coming, and what is good a month after launch will change, and by mid-2021, when the balanced gods come for us. I'm not leveling 4+ warriors for the best Fury, Prot, and Arms covenants as the flavor of the month changes. Here comes my out of left field idea. I played beta for an MMO that didn't make it out of beta, Tabula Rasa. At certain milestones, you clone your character so you can see all the classes and builds. Blizzard will come in and hit us with a soul move ability. For a gold sync or some currency, your soul can drop into another body. That body is now a new spec covenant that you set up. No leveling required, just a cooldown or something. Out of left field, it makes no sense, but we are going to the land of the dead, so hey, why not? What you said about rating and letting people play what they want, I respect that. You're 100% right. I pay my $15 like the next guy, so to be forced into a role you aren't comfortable with will lead to nothing but a bad end. So a lot going on here. The beginning, I think we've talked about so much already. So the second part is an interesting topic. If that game did that, that's pretty cool. I do. That's actually why I liked playing the beta so much, was because they gave you a lot of options to be able to just skip the normal like progression and just get right to the part that you want to test. So if they did something like that in WoW, I don't think I would like it, just because, making the decisions is a lot cheaper when you can just keep doing that. But it is a cool concept. If they wanted to go that way and hammer that in, I could see myself liking it in the future. But that's basically already covered by leveling. Like, you level up and you test, the basic elements of the covenant, and that's how your decision goes. So it's a cool concept though. If they did that, I wouldn't dislike it. But yeah, this whole topic here, first of all, I don't like when people say this. I pay my $15 like the next guy. Well, that sounds like very almost entitled. It's like you demand to have exactly what you want. The way he ends the statement is perfectly in line with my thoughts. But I hate the people who are like, I'm going to do exactly. I don't know. Let's not go into that today. But yeah, totally agree. You're playing the game for fun. Don't ever let somebody tell you how to not have fun. Let's put, like, don't ever let somebody tell you to do something that isn't fun. Because when that's not fun anymore, then that's when you start resenting the game, and that's when you're on the way out, one way or the other. Okay, so Fauser Charles de Silva says, making choices in an RPG is the basics. At the end of the day, WoW is just an RPG. Very minimal statement here, but I agree. It's certainly an RPG. A lot of people don't want it to be, though. I think it's the problem. A lot of people want it to be like an action game, or like a game like League of Legends, where everybody exactly starts at exactly the same, and then they can show how much skill they have. You know what I mean? There's no values, no variables. Sorry. Okay, Pipes Gaming. I don't think the Covenant system will work out the way Blizzard wants. I think the social side and mentality of other players will create more separation than what is already in the community. I am prepared to play the way I want, regardless of meta choices for Spec and Covenant. I play a Feral Druid after all. The only thing I really wish they would change is the weekly lock on Covenant slash Soulbinds, or Covenant Soulbind slash Conduits. I tank, heal, and DPS on the same character. If I want to respect my DPS soulbinds for raid, then I'm essentially locked into being suboptimal for Mythic Plus for the week, unless I want to tank or heal. That just feels bad. But I agree with you on most of this. The balancing will more than likely not be as much of an issue as people believe, and the flood of choices and consequences will make it difficult to actually have a meta. Yeah, that's maybe the biggest thing I could impart. If you haven't followed the system, like if you're actually new to this system, you have to understand that that's like why they're doing this. They're trying to give you so many different things to consider that there can't ever be a mathematical best, because like there's a ton of different types of decisions. You know what I mean? But I do agree overall, the Covenant system is not going to work out the way Blizzard wants. And sadly, it's just because of the community. So I don't, like he says, I think the social side and mentality of other players will create more separation than what is already in the community. Me too. And that's not like, if I was Blizzard, I'd be like, well, sorry, like this is the best we're going to do here. You know what I mean? Like, and the reason that I think they should stick to their guns on this is not because it's like, us versus them. It's because it's like, no, if we do this, it's going to change the way people think about something. So there's going to be people who are actually like, they have like clay to be molded in their mind, unlike these people who are like rock solid. This is never going to change. I hate this, which is basically what a lot of people are saying. There's people out there who are going to be open to it. And then that mentality is going to shape their experience in a different way than the current game does. You understand? So it's like, yeah, give them the opportunity to do that. Okay, Christian Wilson. Yes, this is exactly what most players need to listen to. Thank you for sharing these thoughts. Maybe the best conversation about covenants I've heard. Thanks. Again, I hope that people will hear many different opinions and not just the same one that's being shouted everywhere. Christian, thank you. Ty Kazarify. The corruption comparison was an eye opener. Well said. I think that was maybe the best. The best example I can give. If you haven't seen the original video, you definitely should check it out for that, because like I said, I used to feel the complete opposite about this. I used to think like having more choices was always better. And then when they made all those choices very easy to make, I started to realize that then it actually becomes an issue. Having so many choices like that is not more. More is not more in that point, because then you've completely equalize the chance of having all the decisions made. So you only should ever choose the most important one. You know what I mean? And that really ruins the game. I like it when there's a variety. There's the tug of war between the players in the game. When the game loses and the players win, the game is worse because not only because of the game, but also because the players. So anyway, okay, this is a very there's a lot of comments here, so we're gonna try to go through it quick. But okay, content creator or influencer, pull the ripcord. Let us change covenants. Viewer, I don't have beta and I only sort of know what covenants actually do, but I like this creator, so I'll upvote / like this post and downvote / vote spam anyone who disagrees. It happens. I don't think this is the majority of it, but it does happen. People are sheep, unfortunately, and I do not ever want anybody to say, oh, Metro told me to do this, so I'm going to do it. Please, don't ever do that. Think for yourself. Let my opinion shape your opinion. And then we collectively grow as a community. It's wild to see these mass reports on comments with trigger automatic filters that hide or delete the post, or with 10 likes on Reddit only a minute after posting purely because they disagree. Yeah, I actually got banned from the forums. Literally because of that. I got a 1-day suspension from the forums because these people, you literally are not allowed to have a dissenting opinion on this. Everybody just auto flags it, and it's so many people do it at once that like the forums think you've committed a crime and you automatically get punished. Anyway, you were absolutely correct about this people that like to complain, and when you look at their performance and you see that they aren't actively melee swinging the boss, gushing over something that boosts their damage by 3%, but not caring about something anyone can manage and does 10% of their overall. It's actually a great example. Melee uptime is probably the thing that separates the men from the boys in many ways. And that's the example I gave in the video about how a robot is just going to die because he's going to maintain uptime 100% of the time. And for some classes, melee like auto attacks are more than like every spell, like any individual spell. You know what I mean? So not many, but I believe you can change your conduits for your chosen soulbind at rested area or by using a tome. So you're only locked to the covenant and the hero. Not sure what you're called. So Blood DK, Respect, and Frost could easily change your conduits. So yeah, actually the last person I read talked about this. I probably should have talked about it more, but it's going to be a 4-hour video. So, yeah, the way it works, soulbinds can be changed anywhere, okay? Including the tree, like the way you shape the soulbind. And you could switch from General Draven to me, you know, if you want to take me as a soulbind. I'm opening applications for that. But regardless, that can be changed anywhere. The conduits cannot be. That's the weekly change that was discussed. So like my response to the previous comment, back to that, is that you have so many options in the soulbinds that it's on you to make that decision for your off specs. Like in General Draven's tree, there's 3 options: one for this, one for that, and one for that. Well, as DPS, you want this one, and then as tanking, you could use the other one, or you can just use the same one, right? So it's like there's so many options in each soulbind, and then there's 3 different soulbinds that it's like, yeah, you can't change the exact soulbind path with conduits in it more than once a week. But that's why they're giving you so many options. So it's like, okay, maybe somehow both, like this path is best for blood and frost, but I'd have to change my conduits because I can't use the blood ones as frost, which is definitely a problem. But that's like, if that happens, I don't like, that should not happen. Let's put it this way. It should not happen. It might though. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, have to say, I really like the aspect of picking a class, a specialization, and a covenant with the idea of mine. This is who I am. I love that. That's why I'm so excited for the feature, honestly. I know a lot of RPers / Dungeon and Dragon players who feel that way about their characters too. Yeah, I do too. And I always thought it was weird because even though I definitely like identify with my character and it makes like a big impact on me, there's people out there who take it so far. Like they love their character. They're in love with their character. Like actually in love. Anyway, if their raid leader told them they require to take the best covenant, they will almost certainly be met with a firm no, right? I can absolutely understand why you've done a 180 about this situation, and the points you make are valid. If you could switch covenants at any point in time, then what argument do you have if someone... Right, exactly. That's my point, exactly. That's the whole point. When you have all the choices equally, then there's actually less choices because the balance will never be equal. So you only pick the one that everybody like seems to think is the right option. That's exactly what happened with corruption for me. I feel that social pressure is far more concerning. People with a backbone about what they enjoy shouldn't be punished. So in the sense, I sort of agree with Blizzard about the weekly lockout. Now, if there was a covenant that was absolutely game-breaking that allowed you to kill a boss if, say, all your mages had it, then sure, I'm confident raid leaders could reasonably get people to swap for a week. Let's put it this way. In Warlords of Draenor, the biggest outlier spec that ever existed, well, besides Classic and stuff, Arcane Mage. By far the best spec in the game. It wasn't even freaking close. Unbelievably powerful thanks to the ring and how they worked. And we had mages who didn't play Arcane. We killed bosses. We cleared the tier, cutting edge, without mages who played Arcane. What do you tell? You know what I mean? Tell me the truth here. How many other guilds did that? Seriously, how many other guilds did that? If you had a mage who was like, I really want to play Frost, it was like, well, the wrong expansion, buddy. You got to play Arcane. It's like, no, just be the best Frost mage you can be, man. Do the best you can. That's how it works. Having 20 people who are having fun and being cohesive is always better than having 15 who are trying to maximize every possible thing, and the other 5 are just like, I'm trying my best. Anyway, Sizable sounds like a good player to have on your team. He's not on our team. And I feel having that sort of attitude will absolutely outperform any Covenant abilities. In general, it's just important to have that type of thing. You know what I mean? A willingness to do what the group needs to do. People have to do that. You can't have 20 people who are all very selfish. You literally can't kill the boss then. That's what we talked about in the previous video. Doing things like saving your CDs for a certain part of the fight is so impactful. People save their healing CDs, but not their DPS CDs. It's bizarre. It is funny, isn't it? It almost is funny how the difference between healing and DPS is concerned. If you think about that, imagine, that's actually a great example, dude. If healers played like DPS, think about that. So you just open the 3, 2, 1 tranquility. Could you imagine if somebody did that? I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. But I guess it's just a different mindset. But anyway. Okay, so now there's a bunch of replies. We're going to try to go through them all. But they're equally long. Anyway, I like the idea. The idea of picking your character is absolutely great. I want to be Night Fae Warrior really bad, but my DPS is going to be utter trash compared to the ones that go Venter. And again, that shouldn't happen. Why do people keep saying that? Utter trash. What's the actual theoretical difference between these two covenants right now? If it's more than a few percent, then they're going to have to tune that. You know what I mean? And first of all, are you only looking at the actual ability? Or are you actually looking at the entire covenant? Because I just had somebody say, this other guy was just talking about how good Bastion was, right? A couple comments ago, the guy was talking about how Bastion is just way better. It's well, you can't all be right. You know what I mean? There's got to be some give and take here. I'm also stressed my raid leader might want me to go Necrolord for the utility buff. Then leave the guild. If you're looking for a guild, let me know. We got people who do whatever they want and we still kill bosses. I really, really want to be able to pick my covenant on what I think my character should be, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Yes, you are. The people like myself who are asking to relieve the restriction on covenants are not asking to change covenants willy-nilly. Unfortunately, that's the only way that you could get what you want, right? You might not be asking for that, but you just haven't thought it through. What else are they going to do? You can't be allowed to switch your covenant every pull. You know what I mean? So anyway, not a single person is asking for that. Obviously false, but they only want the abilities that come from the covenants to be decoupled. So in my case, I might actually be invited to a raid, even if I'm Night Fae. You mean so you could use the Night Fae transmog and mounts and do the story, but pick the ability that you want. I mean, yeah, that doesn't really make sense though. Think about it. These covenants are not on friendly terms with each other. You know what I mean? You can't, it doesn't, thematically, it just doesn't make any sense. It'd be oh, I want to play a Blood DK, but I really want Ignore Pain. It's just better than Death Strike, so I'm going to trade Death Strike for Ignore Pain as the Blood DK. It's a warrior ability. It might look weird considering I don't have a fucking shield. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure maybe that's shield block. One of the abilities is they raise the shield, right? I mean, these things just don't work like that. You know what I mean? They're meant to be all part of the system, so you can't mix and match them. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, that depends entirely on whom you ask. There are tons of people who want to freely swap everything as the conduits on characters aren't even either. Yeah, obviously, I don't know why people say that. Not a single person is asking for that. That's just false. Why even say that? Anyway, also, trash DPS is a huge exaggeration, of course. Already seen people testing the raids that had bugged soulbinds, so they were using conduits for another spec. That made 10 times the difference of the covenant ability. Legendary items are also a bigger gap covenant than covenant abilities. Yeah, I think a lot of people are misunderstanding. They're like very focused on what sounds like an issue, but in reality, it won't be an issue. And that's just the spells of the covenants. Absolutely not the biggest part of the covenant system. I'll tell you that. The soulbinds and the conduits are going to equate to way more power than just a single one ability. Unless they change that, that's how it's been for me. Anyway, unless soulbinds are tuned to do like 1k DPS and the worst ones does 500 DPS for you, then it's fine. Even if that was the case, you're not going to pick like all the worst ones every time, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I don't know. Look at logs and see people's class abilities do up to 15 times the damage of the Covenant abilities. TLDR, pick what you want and find a guild without a stupid raid leader. Yeah, well said. So he says, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to numbers because it's all beta. It could be balanced. You're right. I really don't think it will be balanced at all, but for now, let's say it is balanced. And again, you got to give him the time to balance it. Never going to be perfect, but it's your opinion versus theirs if it is or not at times. Another part that feels terrible is if your Covenant ability is just plain boring. My mate wants to play a Night Fae Priest, but the idea of using that ability is revolting. Same goes for the Night Fae Mage one, Necrolord Warrior, Covenant, Kyrian Death Knight. What's wrong with that one? Necrolord, Demon Hunter, Knight. So these are all just opinions. Like, what do you mean? So you don't like the Covenant, then don't use it. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is part of it. Like, oh, I don't like Blood Decay, or I love Blood Decay, but I hate that they have to use, their active mitigation as healing after they get hit. Well, that's a pretty important part of it. So you don't like the Covenant. You know what I mean? I don't think it makes a lot of sense to lock all these things together with big cosmetics and RP choice. It does because they're trying to make it a suite, just like when you play a class, you look and feel a certain way. You pick a Covenant, you have this central theme about everything, and that's who you are now. You can say that's part of the package, but it just feels like shit. Well, that's the game you're playing, so unfortunately you're playing the wrong one. It's not League of Legends. Anyway, everyone has been complaining about either there not being a new class or race or a new talent row. I think it's silly, to be honest, because there's so much other good coming in Shadowlands, but making the Covenant ability choice and extra talent would solve so many issues, and it's probably would be the most interesting talent choice you'd have to make. First of all, it would need to be 4 talent choices, so I don't see how they would do that. But yeah, it's not going to happen. It's a cool idea, but it's too late for that. It's not going to work that way. It's never going to work that way. There's just too much going on with the Covenant system for it to be that literally just go to town and switch it. It's not going to work that way. Anyway, 6-minute fight doing 250k less DPS or 250 less DPS is 90k less overall damage. Resenting the game and being miserable while you raid, your guild has to 19-man the fight while you spend half the fight dead, annoyed about your Covenant pick. And I kind of don't know what his point is either. This goes on for quite a while. I'd like to read all the comments, but they're not really directed at me. So I'm going to move on because we don't want to... we'll move on. Anyway, Storm Wolves. Either way, Mr. God Bunny, I always enjoy reading your comments. iCrest, first time seeing you on the channel, but welcome and thanks for your comment. Okay, Storm Wolves. Very well put. I had a very similar view on the topic ever since they announced it. Content creators that had interviews with devs, wonder who he's talking about, tried to push this idea that the choices should be meaningful, and if the choice doesn't affect 95% of the player base, then why not change to or rework the system? And if this choice doesn't affect, then why not change? I think he means to say why change or rework the system to suit the last 5%. To which you have pointed out that the moral fabric of the game will be different and no longer interesting. I see. Hell of a way to put it like that. What I mean by that is that like these people who are trying to like force Blizzard to get the game made the way they want it are ruining the game. Like they're actually ruining the game. Like you have to understand this happens all the time with actual class content too. Like people say like Rep Paladin needs a rework. It's like, well, I like Rep Paladin right now. So if you force them to make it different, I might not like it. So you know what I mean? Piss off. Like don't do that. Don't just change the game because like a small percentage of the people just never shut up about this. You know what I mean? Like, no thanks. Make the game the way you want to make it. We adapt to it. That's how it works. Anyway, Ian also asks a simple question. If you strip any variation from classes and specs, give everybody literally the same button with the same Bon RNG outcomes, Would this make the game better or worse? I think this is exactly the crux of the problem. By pushing the game philosophy towards one extreme end to please wet dreams of 5%, you'll be ruining it for anyone who actually enjoys the game because they can roleplay as a mage. Yeah, and I do agree with that. Like, in general, I would be more specific, and we just were more specific, but in general, like, people, like, you should understand this. There's not just one thought process that leads players in this game. Even though these people who like beat off to like sims, they think there is. It's just not reality, okay? Regardless of if the sim is reality or not for you, it's just not reality for everybody, okay? So there's definitely more than just that mentality to be thinking about. And it's very, very, very rude for them to try to do, like, force Blizzard to do something just because it affects them. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, okay. I can guarantee that if you strip the game completely, the same people will be screaming that the game is too boring now, and why don't you change classes already? Because we have been pressing same button for years. Yeah, and I don't think they will though. That's my point. Like, those people are already complaining. So like, if you made the game easier for them, they would just complain less. Like, they're complaining because they're not Tiger Woods. That's my point. Like, go back to that example, right? They're complaining because the game is not easy enough for them to be mediocre at. That's the whole viewpoint here. That's the only way. Like, otherwise, like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? You're already not the best player in the game, and you're nowhere near it. You're not doing the things that would take, that would take you to that level. And here you are trying to complain about that. It's like, that's on you, dude. 99% of it's on you. Get better. Do more things to get better. First, when you're the best player in the video game, when you have the rank 1 parse on every single fight, and you're in the best guild in the world, then you could tell Blizzard what to do because they're like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're just leveling resto shamans. Like, that's it. So anyway, also, you mentioned Russian Post. The truth is, they have tried presenting it as an overarching community feeling. I could not stand that about the post. That's what pissed me off. It was like if everybody from Russia agreed. That was the wording that they used. And I know that's probably not written in the language that I read it in, but anyway, like, this is what vast majority of Russian speaking community. Yeah, exactly. In reality, the top of the top, cream de la cream of PvE raiders who run class discords and play in top guilds like Exorcist made a so-called poll. The major problem is that the people were voting either as devoted members of these discords or madly in love with their favorite top echelon guild. Exactly. Influencer situation we described. Very bad for the game. Reality is that vast majorities of the players for whom this system is even designed in the first place, they didn't have a vote because they didn't even know there was a poll. That's really well said. Funny enough, Tucker from Exorcist made a series of videos why he literally presented that any argument against covenant changes are nothing but myths, like the myth that it will affect only 5%, the myth that choice is actually meaningful. And funniest part is that in the comments, the actual majority were saying that this only affects min-maxers and that they should stop being selfish. Yet some still clutched to the wrong idea, and they made a Russian post trying to present flawed views as a commonly agreed on one. I think it is called confirmation bias. Maybe. I'm not a psychologist. I wish I was. Anyway, long post, but I hope it will make some good read for somebody. It made a good read for me. Storm Wolves, thanks for commenting. But yeah, obviously, I think we agree, honestly. I don't know what that dude Tucker did not do, but at least he's in the right boat. You know what I mean? If he's trying if he's doing what I've been talking about doing, at least this guy, formerly a world first, like, absolute best player, in a top guild, and a very, Exorcist raid tools is used very heavily by many. So many look up to that, I'm sure. But it will, like, it's just not, there's no myths here. It's a fact. Like, there's different types of players who are going to enjoy this system differently. So trying to make it seem like, there's only one right answer here is really, 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 really stupid. And it really worries me because, I don't want to get into talking about that guild, but, I feel like they don't have the right approach either because this is where it all started in Nighthold. So you can go back and look at that. But anyway, I just don't have a lot of respect for people who are trying to make it sound like there's only, like, no matter what happens here, it's not going to work for everyone. Obviously not true. Okay, hi, what's up, man? Too many people have a sense of entitlement and expectation of being catered to. So many backseat game developers, it's sad. Totally agree. But what's more sad is when you're a backseat game developer and you don't realize you're a backseat game developer. Like, it's like they think that they're actually in charge of the game. These people actually think that they're in charge of the game. That, like, you have to make the game for us. It's inevitable. You're going to do it anyway. So just do it now. That's what the overarching theme of some of these people's posts are. It's like, no, you're just somebody who's paying the same amount as everybody else. You have no, you do not control the game. And I do feel like this is a real serious problem with Blizzard, man. They like waffle on this so heavily. Like, if BFA wasn't like looked at, like if BFA didn't do poorly, I don't even think we'd be in this boat. They'd just be like, shut up, we're doing it our way, and that's it. Because that's like what Legion was, right? Legion was like, we're making the game. We don't care what you people say. You have to adapt to it. And that's like the start, like the first like year of Legion was that. And then like into BFA, they try to like shift. They're like, oh, well, these systems didn't work. People didn't like it. And now we're in this boat here where like we're listening to the community instead of ourselves, like as developers. I'm not a developer, but they're like, oh, the community makes the game now. Basically, it's how I feel like we're listening. It's like, don't. These people are idiots. Like, don't listen to them. You got one guy says he loves Rep Paladin, one guy says he hates Rep Paladin. Who do you listen to? You don't. You can't listen to two dissenting opinions. And the people who have the dissenting opinion on this topic are getting blocked out by this spam and this hate, this like absolute toxic encirclement of video game. Like, I don't even know how to put it. It's ridiculous. They will not hear an other opinion. They get you banned because you have another opinion. It doesn't even make sense. I don't know. Anyway, Kitsune-sama, you really nailed it. That's the best video about covenants I've seen. I think Wowherd have reached peak idiocy with the topic. Oh, my bad. Wow's herd have reached peak idiocy with that topic. And I believe this is mainly down to the fact that mimetic behavior is now so strong. Relating to or constituting a habitually... I don't know what that is. Anyway, linking covenants choice to class choice is genius. It makes so much sense. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. So it makes sense because that's what it is. They're trying to make another, very important decision that you have to make in the game. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I don't know about peak idiocy. It's just like these people are just, like I said, we described it well in the first video. They're just not. They're not thinking and playing the game for the right reasons, and they don't want the game to be any harder for them than it already is because they already know that, they're not the best that they can be. It's just how it is. Okay, Sean Kerr. Hey, thanks for putting your neck on the line and saying this. Really a fresh breeze of air compared to most videos on the topic. I mean, this is nothing. This is a pretty obvious one to me. Like, this isn't like me trying to convince somebody something that's ridiculous. I think most players, like, the majority, meaning like the people who are actively subscribed to the game, would probably feel like this has some wiggle room to it. You know what I mean? Like, that there's not only one side to it. It's just there's this group of people who are not interested in that wiggle room. They believe there's only their side to it. That's the problem. So like putting my neck on the line, it's like, there's nothing to put my neck on the line for. These people are just wrong. You know what I mean? There's obviously a lot of things to consider here. It's not just change it. It's obviously objectively bad. That's just not true, but that's what those people think. Anyway, SG, my only problem is that transmog is tied to all of this. I want to look like a Venthyr, but I like the Necrolord abilities. Why tie it? Because it's supposed to be a meaningful decision. Just like if you want to play a rogue or a warrior, somewhat similar playstyles in many ways. The rogue wears leather and the warrior wears plate. You have to make that decision. Anyway, lore-wise, it makes little sense, questing, you help all covenants, and covenants clearly work together. Do they? I'm unaware of this. But anyway, yeah, no, it definitely does make sense. If you're committed to the Bastion Covenant, you cannot be committed to another covenant, just like all the zones. You know what I mean? If you're watching these animated shorts they're making, what's his name? Uther is in Bastion for a reason. He was sent there because that's who, like he aligns with, you know what I mean? So for him to be like, actually, I think I align with Venthyr more. Like, okay, now he's gonna go there, and then you can't keep swapping. Is my point. So it definitely makes sense lore wise. To say it makes sense, makes a little sense lore wise. That's you're just not paying attention. Anyway, Durgut Fey. Let's say Blizzard caves in and lets you switch covenants on a whim. Wouldn't you have to farm your respective renown, soulbinds, conduit library, perks on all 4 covenants anyway? Right. This is why it's not going to happen that way. This certainly is not what's going to happen. And you couldn't farm grind every covenant at the same time. Keep in mind that maxing your renown and unlocking soulbinds and perks is what, 12 weeks total? Isn't it obvious how Blizzard would need to scrap any grind slash farm slash unlocks within the covenant? Otherwise, you're still working on renown on your 4th covenant 6 months into the expansion, despite your hard pressured ability. Right. Oh, so, okay. Obviously, he's right about this. That's not how they would do it. What I thought they would do is instead make a uniform progression system. So you unlock all, like, so say like there's 12 steps toward unlocking everything in the covenant. You get 8 steps with Bastion. You get some progress with the other 4 covenants. I think they should do that anyway, honestly. They're probably not going to, but I think they should do that anyway. Because even if you did want to, like, it's not like you can't switch, right? Like, I don't know how many people understand that fully. You can switch. It's just switching back is supposed to be a detriment. So you can't just switch whenever you want, right? So one way or the other, you're going to have to do this. This is an actual problem. I don't think people fully understand that. Like, so it's like, oh, actually, I made the wrong decision. I really want to switch now. But it's going to take me 12 weeks to get back to where I'm at with this covenant, so I'm just not going to switch. That shouldn't be part of the system. That's an actual problem with the system, right? Not this nonsense that we've been going on about. But anyway. Okay, Rowdy Rager. I really hope Shadowlands is good. I always enjoy leveling at least twice. 1 Horde and 1 Alliance. I can see the Horde, but... Anyway, then it becomes, just get my alts to max level and let's grind keys. Well, thanks for the comment, man. Unfortunately, this time around, there's not any difference for Horde and Alliance. Like, I think 0 difference, right? I don't know. Okay, 10 Satoshi 15. My biggest issue with the current system for covenants is how fun is each ability to use in any given content? Open world, PvP, rating, Mythic Plus. How fun is that ability across all specs and the aesthetic of each covenant? Some classes get lucky and they can have all 3 in one covenant, but most don't. Take DK, for example. I like playing Blood, Unholy, and Frost in all different types of content. Blood for PvE tanking. I had the most fun with Night Fae, but I hate the aesthetic. Frost, PvE, DPS, and open world. I had the most fun with Necrolords, and I like the aesthetic. Unholy, I had the most fun with Venthyr Necrolords, and I'm meh about the Venthyr aesthetic, but I like the Necrolord aesthetic. So I either make 3 DKs, which I really don't want to do, to have fun in all types of content I want to play, or I just stick with one covenant and have less fun in other types of content I enjoy playing. Or Blizzard could easily fix this dilemma by letting us freely swap only the abilities so that we, the player, can choose how to have the most fun in any way we see fit. Just like one Azeroth stated, let people play the way they like to have the most fun. The thing is, that again, we've talked about this so much, so I don't want to keep going over it, but it's not going to work that way, first of all, because the covenants are an aesthetic suite. Like, you cannot use a Necrolord ability while you're wearing the Kyrian armor. It just doesn't work, okay? That's not how it's going to be. It's not going to work that way. Yeah, realistically, in this situation, you should make 3 DKs. And that's a problem with the game, not necessarily covenants. Specs are so defining, even still, after the changes in Shadowlands, that you believe Blood, Frost, and Unholy are so different from each other that they need 3 different styles. You know what I mean? Like, that's what the problem here is stemming from that, right? Like, for me, I only play Blood, so it's easy for me to say, but like, if I wanted to play Frost, I would kind of just want it to be Blood, but does Frost stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I would want it. Like, I like Blood a lot. I don't want there to be an entirely separate spec, but that's how the game works. So that's a problem with the game. And it's one that the covenant system is going to feed into, but it's not a problem with the covenants. Problem with the game. It's better to just treat an individual spec like a class. And that's what a lot of people do. In fact, I did that for a while. I had 2 paladins, I played 1 prot and 1 holy. The only reason I stopped was because the one who did not raid was just so far behind the one that did raid that just stopped being worth it. So I just started only playing 1 character. I actually did that. Anyway, okay. Ratfink, well said. Please keep up the good fight and continue to put out content like this. We need more of it for the health of the game. Wish people could think for themselves. That's all I'm asking for. Like I said in the video, I really don't care about the system. It doesn't matter. I'm going to play the game my way anyway. People are going to try to bully me into playing their way, and it's going to be this tug of war the whole time, regardless of which system we have. But I just wish that these people would stop using their platform to try to force others to think their way. That's so fucking rude, man. Stop doing that. You're ruining the game's community. It's an MMORPG. It requires a healthy community, and you're actively trying to ruin it. That's why I can't stand certain influencers who we talked about on this channel, because they act like there's only one possible opinion, and they actively try to get their community to agree with that opinion. That's very fucking rude. Stop doing that. Anyway, the Nasruddin. I agree with the first 10 minutes or so. I don't agree that the system should change to always be able to pick whatever you want. I really think Blizzard should stick to their guns here and tell those, as you say, toxic players to get lost. Wait, when did I say that? The whole thing about world top 10 raiders not actually playing versus the game, but versus other players is perfect description. I mean, that's just the facts. Like, they're not competing against the game anymore. They're competing against others. It's like a golf tournament, like we said. The often brought out argument that you won't be able to get into pugs because your X-Covenant is such a load of trash. For the levels of 99% of people play, you can play any spec class Covenant combination. Playing any Covenant is much less impactful choice than choosing a class that isn't great for the very top level of content, for example. You can still play Lock to a decent IO and BFA, even though it's suboptimal for Mythic Plus. Obviously. You can play with some friends, work your way up slowly, or even start your own group. Right? And the game, like, you know, the higher you get in the content, the harder this becomes. But for a very serious amount of the content, it's just not tuned to be tough enough. That's just the facts of the matter, okay? And if anybody is questioning that now, on this channel, I have a playlist, I believe, where I did dungeons as a brewmaster monk without any, what are they called? Essences. Without any essences. Did not unlock the neck. We completed, and this was in season 3, I think a 17 in time, maybe even an 18. I think 17 in time, 18 total. Did not use any, like literally the main, like everybody, the reason I did that at the time was because everybody was saying how ridiculously unfriendly the game was for alts because they could not get the essences they needed for their alts. And I was like, it doesn't equate to that much. You're confused. The difference between the essences isn't enough for it to matter which ones you're actually using. This is the same thing. It sounds like it. We'll say it's probably going to be way more than that, obviously. But in reality, that's what Blizzard is aiming for. What else? My current guild got cutting edge this tier with only 4 immunities. No Pallies, no Brewmaster, Shami, Resto, Druid, Healing Core. Everything is possible. Of course, you can kill Mythic N'Zoth with less than 20 players, too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure guilds have done that. So, people really need to think about that. I think it's great for the game having to actually make choices, and if the sheep can't use their own brains, that is more fool them. Well said. Corey Sensman, pick whatever has the best mog. They're going to gut the abilities throughout this expansion. Sadly, he's probably right. But I think what they'll probably do is if they do make significant changes to a covenant, they'll probably give you some kind of free option to switch. Like they'll reset, like in classic, whenever they made a big change to talent, they just reset the talent tree for you. So maybe they do that. Maybe they make it so like, if you've already joined and left the Kyrian, so switching back to it would be a huge pain, and they make a big change to Kyrian, they're going to just remove that for that patch. You go switch and then it starts over. That's probably what they do. Okay, Daniel Tabor is another long string here. I was just watching Preach's most recent video yesterday. He is strongly against covenants as they currently are, and I was having a hard time putting to words why I disagreed with him. I think you hit the nail on the head, and I pretty much fully agree with you. Heck, I am someone who plays multiple classes / specs and content areas, and I still don't care if I'm stuck to one covenant, because I would be choosing the one I like best regardless of optimization for every spec. I see this, as you said, as a class choice more than a talent choice, because that's what it is, right? People don't want it to be that, but that is what it is currently. They don't want that. They want a talent choice instead. But yeah, Daniel, well said. Okay, here's all the replies. Okay, let's read them all again. Oh, I see that. This guy's back. Anyway, this isn't a class choice, it's a talent choice. I love my DK, and there are meta breaking ways you can play with this class. Covenants were never going to work for many reasons. Okay, so what are we talking about here? 3 very strange statements to open with. We're going to have an option like this that matters for 2 years and then it goes away. This isn't like picking a class that lasts you 16 years and you have to live with that choice or make a new character. First of all, we don't know that. Very, very likely that is what happens, but we don't know that. Regardless, I think most people, no offense, most people who play this game do not stick with the same thing for 16 years. I feel like I'm one of very few who have committed for the extreme long term in this game. Anyway, speaking of making new characters, it's dumb to make 4 DKs if each covenant is now its own class. Why should we be told not to do that? That we're sheep listening to top end players. No, that's what you should do if you're concerned with maximizing. Yeah, that's who said that. Anyway, I'm being forced to choose either a fun ability that I can play with and enjoy the game with, or play a covenant that I love the zone of, or the meta events for, the armor, the quests, the NPCs. No, you're forced to choose all of it. That's the decision. Just like a class, many facets that you have to like. Why make the game worse like this? Not just giving more, giving the meaningful choice that the community asked for. Unfortunately for them. Why tell me I can't have a teleport as a DK to do nutty stuff and play Necrolords? Because they're all part of the same visual theme and suite that the Covenant presents. Why tell someone that they can't be Groot and use vines to constantly pull people into them as they run away? I don't know what that means. Why can't we turn into an Angel of Death as a Kyran and gain a speed boost for a short period of time, blinking forward to cut down our enemies? I don't know. What are we talking about? Anyway, Blizzard could have made this shit work, but they didn't. Don't call people out for having serious concerns. You're just misunderstanding the concerns you're having. That's my point. Blizzard did make this worse. This work, sorry. They did make this work. This is what they wanted to happen. They didn't accidentally do this. Are we clear on that? And again, it's because the community asked for it. Anyway, the issue I see with this isn't about the personal choice. It's more about LFG. People applying to a group of strangers aren't people for that party. They are numbers. Very well said. Riato Krentor. There are a certain amount of DPS healing tanking that Raider IO attempts to roll into a single number. The Covenant choice adds onto that. I think if a group leader looking to complete his weekly key has 2 rep paladins applying to his group, 1 Kyran and 1 Necrolord, what would they rather pick? I think it's likely the Kyran paladin will have a harder time getting accepted. It's not an issue if you're with a group of friends, but for total strangers trying to pug, yeah, it will become an issue. And again, that whole thing is just purely social. It has nothing to do. The game cannot police that. If they did, they would be chasing their tail for the rest of the time. You're never going to force somebody to play with somebody that he thinks he doesn't want to play with. The systems can be changed, but that person is always going to have that bias. Just like I feel that way about Feral Druid. It's not Blizzard's problem. You know what I mean? It's my problem and the Feral Druid's problem, purely. Anyway, I guess I can see that happening at some level, but I don't think it will be as often as some might think. If most people think of Covenants as a talent choice, I doubt it will ever happen. I have never inspected someone's Azerite traits, essences, or talent choices when looking for people to fill out a raid or Mythic Plus, nor have I ever been kicked for these things. I look for the classes I need, an IO score that suggests they can do the level of content and how many times they have done the dungeon in time, or how many raid bosses they have down. If all that looks good, I guess I kind of assume that the rest is at least good enough to do what they need to do. Maybe they don't have optimal talents and are not doing 100% of their potential, but if we complete our objective, I don't really care. This is actually a really interesting comment. First of all, he's describing how lazy people are when they're trying to be selective. It's actually quite funny because people who are like being super selective about something, which you'd think requires more effort, are actually super lazy while doing it. And they just look at the most superficial metric. And that's why Raider IO score is horrible. But yeah, like that's not a good thing. So it's kind of funny because that is what happens. Anyway, he said, let's see, this is actually also important. He says, if all of that looks good, I kind of assume the rest is at least good enough to do what they need to do. So that's actually really an astounding statement because it's like, well, if this person is 12 of 12 mythic, then you have to assume they know what they're doing, right? Like at some basic level, on average, you have to assume they know what they're doing. So my original situation is the better one then, because it's like, well, they made a decision They've proven that they're good while making that decision, and you can't force them to change it easily, so you have to live with that decision. So it's like if I'm playing something that is looked at as suboptimal, but I'm demonstrating a high level of success with it, then for me to change, like for you to think I should change that in the situation I described where it's a difficult choice to change is irrelevant. You're not going to get me to change that. I've demonstrated success. I can't change it easily. There's no reason to change it. But if I've demonstrated success and it's an easy change, which is what people want for covenants, then people are going to try to force me to change it or segregate me because I haven't changed it. You understand? It's a lot of words, but anyway. Okay, I was disagreeing with him as well. The bubble that they live in is not the majority, and they want to dictate the game design for their competitive gaming lifestyle. He said it best. They aren't playing to beat the game. They are playing to beat the other players to the end game. So who is he talking to? Reed Lutz. Okay, a lot of comments on this. I'm just going to keep moving here. I'd like to read these, but I don't know if they're even referring to me, and there's probably some good stuff here, but I'm just going to stick to the actual comments that are definitely referring to the video, because we still got a lot left. We have almost 450 comments left. No, I'm just kidding. I agree with you and disagree with you at the same time. That's very good. That's a good thing, Ben. That means you know what your opinion is. I play much like you, where I play Vengeance Demon Hunter 95% of the time. Love the class, love the spec. It's my bag. But herein lies the problem. We both play the classes and specs that we love or like. You choose talents that reflect how you want to play, and in Shadowlands, we're getting a choice to what covenant we want to level and explore, i.e. meaningful covenants, meaning covenants. Okay. I personally wanted to play Night Fae because it seems like an area of the lore that's interesting to me. I love the way the armor looks for leather, but choosing that would gain me 2 abilities. One is Ho-Hum for vengeance, the other is frankly idiotic from a design standpoint. Which one is that? The hunt, I guess he means. Now I want they did change that massively, by the way, since last time this guy commented on this. I wonder what he thinks. Now I want my tank to be as strong as I can make it. I think that's a goal of nearly everyone in the game. It's a goal of, like, it's a superficial goal, but when they're demonstrating that they're not actively taking every opportunity to make it a goal, then it's just like a wish, right? It's not a goal, it's a wish. Like if my goal is to become a PGA Tour professional and I'm not taking drastic actions to stop shooting 90s as a golfer, then I can't be trying to force the PGA to loosen its restrictions. You understand that? Like if I put in like millions of dollars of lessons and clubs and all this shit and I still can't get there, then like, okay, you've had some cripes here, right? But for most people, they don't actively pursue greatness. They want it. It's a wish of theirs, but they're not actively pursuing it. So they don't have the room to blame the company making the game that they're choosing to play when they're not reaching it. You understand? That was my point from the get-go. Anyway, if it weren't, then no one would wear the correct type of armor or choose things that just didn't match, right? There's some, like I said, some superficial want to succeed, but most people do not pursue success at the highest level, so they should not be worried about this situation. Anyway, if you went to dungeon, you still need to meet a standard of power, just like raids, and that standard of power is not tuned to be high enough for a single decision like this to matter. With that being said, some of these covenant abilities are stupid, speaking as vengeance. At this point, I cannot take the Night Fae just because the power means nothing to my tanking in the class, but it's the story I want to involve myself in. That's a different problem, unfortunately. It is regrettable that you feel that way, but that's a different problem. You know what I mean? Just because you don't like the spec or just don't like what you get for the spec doesn't mean that it's like objectively a problem. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, that's part of the decision. Anyway, when creating something like this for people, you have to balance it at a design stage. Right. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, that's not possible. Like, some people probably love the ability for that covenant. So anyway, a better option would have been to do everything they have, but with a new talent line associated with the covenant ability to tailor it more to the spec and style you want to play. It's not perfect, but you can build something and say it's a player's choice. Then in the end, not give them a choice by saying you get this power. And that's it. Actually, what I kind of rushed through that, but what they should have did is they should have made multiple options for each spec or each covenant. So it's a blood decay. if I pick Night Fae, I can choose one of two abilities, or more would be better, but more than two is probably a ridiculous number. But yeah, like, so if I was like, if like you were able to, then it makes it less about the ability, right? Like if as a, let's say as Bastion, whatever it's as Kyrian, I could pick that, like, that strong single target one, or I could pick a big sweeping AoE one, or maybe I could pick like a big mobility style one, right? Then it's like, well, now it doesn't matter which covenant I pick as much, because I can get these different styles within that covenant, and then the more about the flavor is more important. That's what they should have did. They did not do that because it would be very difficult to create that many abilities, I suppose. But if they did that, it would be more like legendaries were in BFA or in Legion, where it was like a lot of classes used the same ability. Like there was those neutral legendaries. These things were powerful. You had those, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, so that's what they should have did, but it just probably was never on the table. So Michael Pate, I read this one already. You convinced me. I left the game in March 2019, and since I don't like the system, it would be foolish for me to support these developers and come back until it gets changed. And judging from the legendary vendor and the corruption vendor, I have no doubt it will be changed at some point, and maybe I will come back. Yeah, so he's being sarcastic, basically saying like how I said if basically if you don't like the game, then stop playing it, basically, and you should not play the game. Absolutely. I'm not here to try to convince anybody to play a game they don't like. If you don't like the game, if you haven't liked the game since March 2019, pretty good chance in March 2020 you're not going to like it. March 2021 you're not going to like it. The game doesn't change that much. There's a fundamental portion of the game that's always going to be the same, and if that doesn't interest you, then you probably shouldn't play the game anymore. Regardless, they're probably not going to change. I mean, if they do what the community wants, pull the ripcord, then yeah, maybe that will change people's minds. But like, if they don't, like, because they didn't with legendaries or corruption, right? They just made them more accessible for people in the end because the power creep was over. Like, there was no reason to continue being exclusive. You know what I mean? That's why they changed those things. It's not because they like that's what people didn't seem to understand about BFA. They're like, I can't believe you didn't learn. You fixed it in Legion and then you unfixed it in BFA. It's like, no. That was a nerf. That wasn't a fix. That was not a fundamental design, like, paradigm shift. The legendary vendor was there because the expansion was over. So that, like, all right, it's over. Go do whatever you want. Same with corruption. So that might happen in some way with covenants, but it's, unless they do what people want, which they might, that's not going to placate you, probably. You just don't like the game. That's all there is to it. For me, no matter how bad any one thing is, like, for me to watch somebody make a video about something, a single topic, and for me to be like, I'm not going to play the game because of that topic, it just would never happen. Never. There's so many things in this game that I like that if I hated even 50% of them, I would still find enjoyment in the other 50%. So I just can't shake that feeling that there's people who literally don't like anything about the game and they act like that's Blizzard's problem. Anyway, Papa Bull. I felt essences were a good answer to fixing the holes in specs/classes and wish the system would have carried over to the expansion. I mean, that's kind of what this is, right? It's just essences are more like soulbinds instead of covenants. The covenant system is definitely not something that was in BFA realistically, but all of the systems leading up to this have definitely influenced what it is. All right, we're almost done. Oh God, no, we're not. Holy shit. Oh my God, there's so many comments. Oh wow. All right, this is gonna be a really long video. That's fine, we're doing it. We lost our place though. Okay, I need to get some water then, hold on. All right, we're back. Bryce B. They should have picked the class ability and each covenant just changed how that one ability works in whatever way. Yeah, that was another option. They should have just made them modify spells in a big way. Or added a new class ability, then design it slightly different per covenant to not totally ruin the if I pick scenario. This would have solved more problems than designing 48. brand new abilities, each needing to be, yeah, definitely agree. Obviously, that's what they probably should have did. Far too late now. The reason they didn't do that was because they wanted to add all these flashy new visuals to the game. They wanted the game to look distinct, the Covenants to offer that distinction. So that's why they did it. But if there was a way to do it that way, where like Night Fae alters D&D, and then say Necrolord could have altered Gorfine's Grasp, because that's kind of what it is. That would have been a much better solution for sure. Then we'd have a lot less people complaining about it. Anyway, as someone who likes transmog, Tyra, what's up? Someone who likes transmog and visuals very much, I would love that the visual part and character power part would be separated. I want to play Blood DK or Prot Warrior. I haven't decided. Visually, I love the Kyrians. For Prot Warrior, I will choose them hands down. The ability looks fine. For Blood, the ability is absolute trash from my viewpoint from outside. The Kyrians, yeah, it is not great. I agree. I would have to choose between hating the visuals of my character and my Sanctum order over shooting myself in the foot with a shitty ability. It doesn't need to be the best ability, but at least it should not be awful. Well, it's not awful, first of all. It's just not the way I would like to play my DK. But it's not awful. It's actually quite good. So no concerns there. I don't care that I can only have one ability as long as it's usable in every scenario. Not the best in every, but usable. It's usable in every scenario. That's the point. Like, these abilities are definitely flexible enough to be usable in every scenario. Again, it's just like playing a Shadow Priest, right? Is Shadow Priest usable in every scenario? Obviously. Are they going to be the best for every scenario? Obviously not. You know what I mean? JKR. Completely agree, and you summarized it very well. Thanks for the short comment. Cloud Strife. They have to add more every expansion. No, they don't. So this is referring to a very specific time in the video where I said that people have like very short attention spans, and if they didn't keep adding new content, new like major systems every expansion, people would stop playing it. And he says, no, they don't. I can't think of one other game that reinvents the wheel every 2 years to the extent WoW does. He's probably right, but there's not a lot of other games out there that are trying to do what WoW's trying to do. So other games do expansions that add more story, dungeon raids, etc. Maybe a couple new skills. That's it. There's no law that they have to have a new singing, dancing, brand new system every 2 years and bring all these problems on themselves. Well, I think you're conflating two separate issues here. You're talking a lot about probably the borrowed power situation. That is not optional. If you want there to be good decisions, like if you want the game to give you a lot of power, it has to be removed at the end every 2 years. But I think maybe, I'm not exactly sure what he's going for with this comment, but to say that like let's put it this way, if his point is they didn't need to add the suite of power systems including the artifact and legion, they didn't need to add the suite of power systems including the neck and the legendary cloak and all that in BFA, and they didn't need to add the covenant system and soul bonds and legendaries in Shadowlands, it's like, well, what else is there? I mean, like, that's the main addition. You know what I mean? That's like what the gameplay needs to be different from the previous expansion. So they could, but you're just getting less, right? Like, that's not something that anybody should want. It's like, sure, they could just literally add story and make you level up a few more times, but that's not, I don't know. Why would anybody want that? That's just less. Okay, anyway, tack blades. I hate min-maxing at any given moment because it leads to a single answer for every situation. The problem is people think it leads to a single answer for every situation. In reality, it leads you to closing your mind, which is definitely not good for anybody. Anyway, then all the sheep just mindlessly follow. Okay, I jumped the gun. You were right. I want Shadowlands to break that mentality. I want to see a lot of fire mages that are different and they all shine in different ways. Exactly what the Covenant system is trying to be. It might not end up succeeding, but I do think that is what it is trying to be. Anyway, the main problem is the loud vocal voices on social media are mainly the high-end players who can't think of any way to play except for min-maxing, but it doesn't represent the main players, right? And even more so, I would say that they're like threatened by anything that makes their min-maxing more complicated, which is crazy. Anyway, I hope they go much further in the future. Hybrid specs again, remove the need for simming, just make it not possible to min-max. I think they are trying to do that with the Covenant system. It's never going to happen because these people are so like, they're so like goal oriented, I guess is the way to put it. They're so output oriented that they just have to rely on the math. They can never, like the way I play the game, I try a bunch of things and I use the one that feels the best for me. Maybe it's not mathematically the best, or maybe even I feel the best about something that's actually giving poorer results than I think it is. But it's all about feel. It's just like that's how I play golf too, man. How I play golf too. It's all about feel. I hit the shot that feels the best. I take the approach that feels the best. I lay up when it feels the best. It's not mathematically the best. You know what I mean? That's how playing games works, I think. For most, like for normal people, but in WoW, those people don't exist. Okay, more water. Who's been Wall? I've been a long time sub. Thanks for your long time support. I don't comment, but I have to agree on your points and just having fun. I had a question. How do I get into a guild rating normal heroic learning guild so far into expansion? And where do I go to find dungeon routes? Oh, well, dungeon routes, I have an entire video on. A lot of info on the channel for that. In terms of finding a normal guild, guild learning, I don't know about that. I've never thought about that, so I have no idea. Probably just start at the guild recruitment forums, make a post, and people will reach out. But unfortunately, a lot of people on there are just spamming, so might be difficult. Okay. Anyway, well said, Tomek. Came same conclusions. This competing attitude even was shown in Preach Talk on YouTube. He had with Ian Hazakosis, which IMO was really rearded to show game director that he potentially doesn't know what he is doing with the game. Oh, really weird. Anyway, I comment on this. I'm not going to show it on stream or on this video because I don't want this to turn into a preach thing again. But long story short, there's a lot of influencers on YouTube who have these very insular mindsets, and he's certainly one of them, unfortunately. But I just really fear that these guys continue to flex their influence on things like that, where they actively trying to create the game instead of just play the game. I don't like that. Okay, anyway, I perfectly understand your statement. The issue, unfortunately, that majority of player base won't understand this, and it will create a big issue where when you will now have to be not just the right spec, but also the right covenant for Mythic Plus groups and raid pugs. And again, you won't have to do that. You could easily. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but you could easily complete content without a talent, like without talents. Easily, you can complete content without 20 players. We do it all the time. Like it's just not tuned that hard, so you do not need this. It's just a social thing. Anyway, therefore, it will be a big issue once the game launches. As you said, Blizzard doesn't have the best record of balancing. It's an understatement. Well, no, it's not an understatement. That's the statement I meant to make. Don't put words in my mouth. They don't have a great record of it, but it's because they have to keep reinventing the wheel because players want more and more and more and more every expansion. And that's not good for anybody. That's making this problem. Anyway, they have the absolute worst record. I doubt it. Anyway, and I'm supposed to have faith in them that they will be able to balance this many abilities for Mythic Plus, Raid, and PvP. They're not going to be balanced for everything. They're not supposed to be. That's not the goal. Anyway, yet again, we will have to wait for 9.2 and 9.3 to fix when it's going to be freely swappable. Let's hope it doesn't come to that because that would be disappointment. If they're going to do that, they should do it early. That's 9.3. They'd change that. That would be stupid. That would be really dumb. Anyway, the polar bear freak. What's up, man? Like the analogy with socialism, only that if it was like socialism, you would only have the choice of the worst corruption on the vendor. Yeah, I made a little bit of maybe a politically charged comment. I'm surprised there hasn't been more people talking about it. But what I meant by that was just like they want like I don't know the word, equality of outcome. I've heard said a lot. They want the same equality of outcome. You know what I mean? That's not right what I mean to say, I don't think. But basically they want there to be like they don't want there to be any repercussions for the choices. They want there to be very even, you know what I mean? And then they just pick the one that wins. That's like they want there to be no barrier, I think is probably what I mean to say. Okay, anyway. Thanos Riddler. Hello, brother. I understand what you say 100%. And by the way you look at things, I agree with the way you put it down. My only question is why the fuck do they have to make these changes in every expansion? Why do they feel the game needs that? If the answer is, well, they are developers and that's how it is, if you don't like it, don't pay/play, which is a logical answer, then I'm afraid you will have to change the channel name and the game you stream in the future. Wait, what? It's not a matter of how we receive the changes. It's a matter of why they are making them in the first place. I don't understand that last comment. But yeah, I'm gonna be playing the game regardless. Anyway, the reason is like maybe he's conflating two things that I said. I don't understand this comment, but the reason that they do that is because that's what people asked for. Like we talked about this already, but like if they literally added nothing to the expansion, then nobody would like people would be pissed. Like they've done this too many times now, and people keep wanting more and more and more. So this is the result. Okay, let me get a little bit more water here. Oh, my throat's killing me, man. Anyway, Benny Jones. Dude, honestly, I play the game to have fun, and I play whatever spec and class I want, but sadly, I start to cap at 15 to 17 because I'm not a fire mage, prot warrior, healing monk. No, that's not why you're capping at those. I promise you that. That is certainly not why you're capping at those things. Anyway, but normally when that happens, I just start in another guy. It's you're having fun. In Shadowlands, I figured whatever ability seems good to me is the one I'm picking because it's cool. Example, one of the class Covenant's ability for prop pally is shoot Avenger Shield at all targets. Yeah, it's going. But if one is BIS or whatever they want to call it, I'm going to stick to my thoughts and opinions that honestly how everyone should play the game. Well, in the end, I agree, certainly. Luckily, that one does seem really powerful, and it's pretty clear that it's probably going to be very good. So, ties Zazarify again. Even if the system works, those people will never say it did and just state that it ruined Shadowlands. I think the ultimate win here is that they just stopped talking about it. That means that it's fine, it's passable, or they left. Like that's perfectly fine. Like I know nobody wants to hear that, but like if people who dislike the game just stop playing it, that's good. That means they made the right choice. You know what I mean? Not Blizzard, but that means the player made the right choice. Like he chose the right path for him. Okay, so obviously you hope that everybody could be happy, but that's not possible. Okay, Siegfried Dubé says, very good explanation and very good points. Thanks for another short one. Vidget Gamings, you're absolutely right. If you're upset by this system, you should be equally upset that you don't have Blink as a warlock and advocate for Blizzard to homogenize the crap out of the game. It's an RPG. It should be about the character, not the player. I totally agree. I don't know, not sure I agree with the character, not the player thing, because that is part of it too. But yeah, overall, he's right. He hit the nail on the head. It's like if every class should have all the strengths and none of the weaknesses. That's kind of what I was trying to get at with the socialism comment. Like they want all the strengths. They don't want any of the weaknesses. And that's just not life. That's just not life, man. That's why I said what I said in the last video about genetics and overcoming adversity IRL. You have like predispositions to succeed and to fail at certain things. That's just how life works. That's why it's in video games. They modeled it after real life. You know what I mean? That's why it's that way. Anyway, Captain Cribble. I'm just surprised this topic has hit as hard as it has. My biggest concern is the loot drop lowered and the change in the loot box. Basically kills PvP and Mythic Plus if you raid. What? If you just do keys or PvP, it's okay, but everyone seems fine and says, let loot matter. This game has never been like that in the last 10 years. Wait till people find out there's no weapon from the raid, you get token. What are we on about? I don't know. I don't understand that, my friend. Sorry. Anyway, Michael Pazik, I think is how you would say that. For me, the biggest problem now is that some of these abilities make no sense, tuning aside. I always bring Kyrian Rogue ability for this argument. It is so fundamentally broken and not working at all, I foresee a burnout for person playing this, even if said person wanted his rogue to be this valorous, virtuous version. Yeah, you're right. Community put its effort and attention in the wrong place. Certainly. I totally agree with that. And I don't know what the Kyrian rogue ability is, but there is one for Druid that I think is just absurdly bad. So we've talked about that a lot. It's just like a terrible design. Okay, Sergedzi. I don't know. Interesting points, but to me, this is oversimplifying some of the concerns. Yes, there are sheep, but this feels like a gross exaggeration of how many people are like that. I don't know if you watched the video then, because that's certainly not the crux of my argument. Yes, there are people that will min-max and people that will follow that, but you keep saying that people need to have fun. What if for me, fun is having the abomination arm, but after a couple months, it's not fun anymore due to it getting changed, or I just want to try something different and change my character to be more fun for me, but I can't do that with the current system. Well, you'll be happy to know that you can. Yeah, if a couple months down the road you want to change your covenant, you absolutely can. You could change it a couple days after, seemingly. So, although we still don't know exactly how that's going to work, and the fact that it's still not in the beta makes me think that they're really making this decision like this is going to be a hard decision for them. So, and if there was any confusion here, I certainly don't think that the majority of the issue here is that people are sheep. I'm just saying the top people seem to complain an awful lot about something that they're willingly putting themselves through, and the people looking up to them acquire that from them. Wouldn't it be great if the top players were actually the role models that most competitive athletes and, like people who are in competition are? There's a reason that, they block out the negative from these top athletes because they're role models. But in WoW, that's on display everywhere. Like imagine if Tiger Woods was just on Twitter, like 20 hours a week, bashing people on Twitter, like lol, this guy he's so shit at golf. Like imagine if he did that. You know what I mean? Like, like it's very important for community. And then this guy accurately says, "Party for everyone," says, "except you can." I don't like. That's it. I mean, no offense, man, but like you're kind of the reason that this is a problem in the first place. Talking about oversimplifying some of the concerns. You don't even know what the system is you're talking about. That's not good, dude. That's a real problem. I do it all the time too, man. Trust me. It sucks to be in this position because you don't know you're in the position until someone calls you out. But if you're worried about the system, you probably want to look into it all the way. Okay. Anyway, Agilus Waste. Corruption most assuredly did not fix player agency for damage. To clarify what that means, player agency for damage refers to the damage that is being put out for you that is directly controlled by the player. For example, if you're auto-attacking and then hit Devastate, that is a player-controlled action. What is not player-controlled is Twilight Devastation proccing, your Azurite bonus proccing, your Essence secondaries proccing. None of that is tied to or related to a player's controlled actions. It's all RNG-based. No, but you chose to wear the gear, so that's your action, yeah. Like, there's passive things in WoW. I don't know what the hell this comment's even about. Corruption most assuredly did not fix player agency for damage. He's probably confusing the conversation I had where I said I really wanted corruption to be about, like, a very deep cut at, like, changing my character. So he's probably got confused there. Okay, 7 Rune Lehes. My view on this comes from a history of playing RPGs as a child. I want my character to be as strong as possible. I don't care if I'm not the best player in every piece of content, but that doesn't mean I don't want my character to be as strong as I can make it. Final Fantasy VII, I got all my characters to 99 with Mastered Materia and beat the optional hardest boss in the game. Final Fantasy IX, maxed out all my characters, unlocked all the abilities, got a gold chocobo, and went and killed Ozma. Pokemon, full team of level 100 just for fun. I play multiple specs in WoW. I play PvE in Raid, Mythic Plus, and PvP. I want my character to be as strong as possible in there. I might only raid at heroic level, do 20s in Mythic Plus, and read 1800 in Arena. But that doesn't mean I'm an elitist meta slave that wants to min-max every moment in time. I just want my character to be as strong as I can make it, and each spec for each piece of content. I don't care about min-maxing every fight. Then you don't want your character to be as strong as possible. Like, how do I have to get you to say it? Like, is that clear now? Then it doesn't matter, okay? It's fun for me to make my character feel powerful and fun to play. Good. Then pick the covenant that makes you feel that way the most. If I'm hampered by a system because they want it to be as big of a choice as picking a class, I don't like it. Then you don't like it. I don't know what to tell you. It's not their problem. Like, there's things that you don't like about certain things, right? Like, I don't really understand this. You want your character to be as strong as possible. I don't care if I'm not the best player. Then you don't want your character to be as strong as possible. Like, that's what it means. That's what this means. Like, to be as strong as possible. Do you know what the word possible means? Not like, I like making my character stronger. That's what you should have said. But my reply to that would have been like, well, you don't like it enough for Blizzard to change their system. That would have been my response to that. But if you want your character to be as strong as possible, then you take every possible angle to make it that strong. You're not doing that. So that's not Blizzard's problem. Lasherik says, excellent analysis. Thanks a lot. Okay, coffee break. So what about classes that can be multi-spec Druid? I play Druid to play as healer in Mythic Plus, tanking DPS and raids. Basically, I'm supposed to pick a covenant that will directly impact my ability to play every avenue of gameplay. With every other temporary power system, you weren't restricted on what you could play. You're not. Okay, first of all, you're not. This is not this is not Azerite gear where that literally does nothing for you. Okay, are we clear on that? So like if the Bastion pick for Resto Druids is like 5% ahead of the Necrolord pick, but the Necrolord pick is like 3% ahead of the Bastion pick, that doesn't mean that you're restricted. Do you understand that? And I've already said this so often, it's hard to believe that people still don't understand it. That small theoretical difference between the covenants is not going to stop you from playing the game in any way. It's only idiots out there who try to gatekeep based on it. Those people are not worth your time. Don't worry about them. Using Legion as an example, I could play Balanced Druid and level up my artifact weapon, but I could also level up my other spec at the same time. It's just not the same system. It's just not. It does suck for alts, or for off specs. So it's definitely worse for off specs. But that's kind of a problem with the game right now, I feel like. You know what I mean? It's almost because this is not the only time that this happens, right? Like it used to be way worse. Like for example, if you wanted loot, it came with certain stats on it, and it was based on what your class was or what your spec was. So if I was Blood Decay, I'd get tanking gear. If I wanted to use another spec, I couldn't get the gear again from the raid. It's a once per week thing. So I had to make a choice. Do I want my loot spec to be Frost and get Frost DPS gear with hit and stuff on it? Or do I want my tanking gear? You know what I'm saying? And then, before personal loot or whatever, there was master loot. So like if I want the GM to give me loot, I have to tell him I want it for blood. But if I want to play Frost, then I have to tell him I want to play Frost. He's not going to give me both. He's not going to give me tanking gear and DPS gear. That's not going to happen. So you make that choice. So again, like terrible examples. You know what I mean? Okay. You can still switch your spec. When, let's say, a 24 Mythic Plus key is world first, your Covenant will not stop you from timing a 22. That's fact. Yeah, it is fact. I agree. San Holo. But it does affect what ability I can provide as I switch specs. Having a movement ability, Soul Shape, is amazing for Resto because it doesn't force us out of a Druid form, but for Guardian it does. Oh. Well, that's probably not intended, honestly. It doesn't, should not stop you from tanking. That's probably just a bug. They should definitely change that. As far as I know, other tanks, yeah, okay. That's probably just a bug. Another bad example. Jack, welcome. Didn't they say that the conduits are not destroyable? So you can just pop them out one a week and go to a different covenant. Yeah, you're misunderstanding system. I'm not going to be able to explain it to you today, but I hope that you have figured it out. Magnus, no. So basically, a bunch of elitists, selfish, self-righteous min-maxers, cough, preach, cough, are trying to hijack the game design so their needs are catered to over the basic wishes of the developers. Here's why I'm on their side. Makes a long list of reasons why giving in to demands would be a terrible choice. But stupid people will listen to them and complain a lot. So let's just surrender, okay? Okay. I don't know. Are you against me or for me? I can't tell. I'm not sure. Thanks for the comment. Josh Bedford, great video. Disagree. Damian Chang, there is some good points in this video, and it's great to see a different perspective, but I really insist on the fact that the system actually feels like a trap for many reasons, because people outside of hardcore min-maxers want choices. The choice to mess around with the different abilities and different specs, because some Covenant abilities can't be designed to work as good for all of the specs and therefore feel bad to press from a design perspective. Wait, maybe I missed something here. Something in my eye. Choice to mess around with the different ability and different specs because some Covenant abilities can't be designed to work as good for all the specs and therefore feel bad. It's about off specs again, I guess, right? The choice to be able to get the ability they want and they have fun with and not feel bad if they have to go in a Covenant that they don't feel attached to or vice versa. Some Covenant abilities are locking build behind their synergy with legendaries, which feel bad when you like to switch to your playstyle. Because of a lot of us have played this game for a long time and that we lost so much spells over the year because a lot of talent trees have been neglected as well. It's a bit of a ramble here. I really feels like the cons of the system have a bitter taste for many people because they crave for new things to do. I think that you can feel like a Chiron with only cosmetic perks or new effects to your spell. Player power doesn't need to be involved for this to work. Yeah, that's your opinion. I could agree with it for sure, but I don't think Blizzard needs to, honestly. Like I think it's definitely more powerful when you have to make that big of a decision. Um, I don't really understand much of what you're saying, unfortunately. Probably because it's over an hour and a half, over 2 hours now that I've been reading these comments. But I would definitely say that, that's part of the decision making. Like, if you feel like this ability is synergizing well with the legendary, then that might be why you pick it. You know what I mean? Okay, cells interlinked. Your opinion is pretty insightful, and besides the weird communism comparison, I do get where you come from. It is a bit weird, I agree. I don't play beta, so I can't really tell if the Covenant system is any good or not. All I know is that player power connected with a very limited access to that power has not functioned well in this game for 2 expansions now, so ultimately I lean towards Preach's argument. Oh god. That of course doesn't mean I completely disagree with your opinion. For me, it's not just balancing that power. I would rather like to see all classes being adjusted, not reworked, to a gameplay that just works rather than one borrowed power system after another. Not that I don't enjoy having something new to play with the expansion, but also always limiting power access to the beginning to soften it up at the end just annoys the heck out of me. I see. Well, the borrowed power thing, which is not the topic of this video, I will touch on this quickly, is just a function of the actual power. Like, unless you don't want there to be very big power swings from the start to the end of an expansion, which some might not want, then this is how it has to be. They cannot allow you to keep corruption. Like, you know what I mean? That system cannot be in the game for more than one expansion. It would just ridiculously break the game. But player power connected with a very limited access to that power has not functioned well in this game. See, I mean, I think that that's just fundamentally incorrect. I think a lot of people just think it didn't function well, but like, player power at the core is the class that you pick, right? And player interaction with that class is like the reason you play the game. So it's almost like it does function very well. Like, you know what I mean? Just like if that's like something that you can accept, the fact that people play the game means it works very well, right? If it didn't, nobody would play the game. Okay, anyway, Alfred. I can't really dispute any of the major points you touched on in this video. I understand and agree with your reasoning for why you believe the current state of Covenants is fine. The extreme majority of players will absolutely not need to be any particular one of them to succeed at any given challenge the game throws at them, be it PvE, PvP, given enough time and gear. I don't think they will be as impactful as they would have been in order for them to have that effect. For instance, the extreme example used in this video, like 50% power deltas between them. I'm personally okay with it if the system doesn't change drastically before release. Okay. My one question to you and to those in complete agreement with the stance taken in this video is this. Do you think there is something inherently wrong with lesser players wanting to be the best they can be on a personal level, regardless of whether or not they have to be for the content they do? Because I agree with you, they probably don't. Do you really think it's correct for the game to now say, sorry, you simply can't? Unless you're willing to jump through massive hurdles like leveling 4. So again, this is not something that's new. This is what I tried to make clear in that video. It's really disheartening that it wasn't made clear, and I could understand it was a long video. This one's even longer. But I do think a lot of people just didn't read it or didn't focus on it the whole time. But this is not new. The examples I give in the first video are why it's not new. To say you simply can't is obviously false, because you can. It just requires you to make decisions. You know what I mean? That's the point of the system. So, but the more hard-hitting point of this, do you think there's something inherently wrong with lesser players wanting to be the best they can be? No, provided they actually pursue it and not just make excuses when they fail. That's my point. This whole thing is about making excuses when you failed. Like, if you're trying to get better, then you limit the variables and excel at what you can. That's like, seriously, I can't help but talk about golf, man. It's so obvious to me. I go out there, I only have so many shots I can take, and I limit the variables, and I get better every time. I learn, and that learning experience is progress. But I'm not here calling up the PGA and complaining about their rules. You know what I mean? Like, that's what these people are doing. These people are calling up the PGA and be like, you need to change this 2-stroke penalty, man. This is ridiculous. It's like, no, you just get better. So if you're not at the absolute, like if Tiger Woods said that, if a bunch of professional golfers were like, this 2-stroke penalty for this thing is really unfair, man. I've been playing golf for a long time. It's really unfair, but I'm going to keep playing, but it's really unfair. I'm just letting you know it's really unfair. Then you'd be like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? But for people who are not in that position, who are like, they're trying to get better, but they're not, like, they're worried about the wrong things. So it's like, this isn't a problem. This is their problem. Something they have to think of, they have to understand. And that's why I made the video. So in other words, long term, after the novelty of choice we've made has worn off, after we've experienced excelling in the areas in which our choice has given us advantages, and maybe slightly even underperforming in areas where others made a different choice, we'll have been happier than if we had the option to realistically swap between these covenants. And again, you have that option now. You can swap whenever you want. Just if you want to keep swapping constantly, it's going to require a lot of work. Apparently, we still don't know what the reality is there. Would it be so bad and boring if this became another extended talent system potentially? Yes, I think so. If we had access to more gameplay when and where we wanted it, at the cost of losing that impactful choice, meant to carry similar weights to picking a class. That's my point. If you want the impactful choice, you got it. If you don't want that, then you just don't want what was asked for by the community. So unfortunately, this is just like, there's not a lot of winning here, man. There really isn't. People asked for this, they got it, and now they don't want it. Now, maybe a different group of people don't want it than the first group, but one way or the other, this was asked for, they got it. This is what happens when you let the community make the game. They need to stop doing that. Anyway, I personally am not sure. I see both sides, and I'm not taking the stance that those who feel they need it in the same way the world-first competitors will are correct. I actually think they're genuinely delusional if they truly believe that to be the case, as you seem to. They definitely are. Anyway, I do think that there is some merit to both the current system and the prospect of one less strict, like one that someone like Preach and many others advocate for. So what instead, the prospect of one less strict, that's the legendaries. You make them and you switch them whenever you want. They're giving you both. The legendaries honestly might be more powerful than the covenants in many ways. It's very possible. Some of these legendaries are very powerful, man. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you have both. So I don't know, like it doesn't both need to be the same way. They could be different, and you make the decision for one, and the other one you switch when you want. That's how it works. Sackless. My only concern is I go from one permanent, changeable with enough time, choice of class, now covenants forced to choosing of a spec and a content focus. I don't generally raid or PvP seriously, but I have played them fairly casual at times. When gear swapping was a thing in Legion, I did it for almost every pull. I never did it because I was told to. I do it because theory crafting and changing loadouts is what I enjoy in the game. If I'm not enjoying something, I can change it. And again, that's what legendaries are for. That's what Soulbond, some of these other systems could be for. This is just, it's just one thing that you're asked to make a decision for. And just like classes, there's the overarching thing, and then there's the small things that are tied to it that have more, minute-to-minute decisions associated with them. So, not new, should not be surprising anyone. Honestly, the whole gear swapping thing was cool at the time. I liked it, but it certainly was not what the game is supposed to be. And I'm surprised that they didn't change it in Legion, to be honest. Okay, there's Jix. Let's keep moving. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, let's read the comment. I agree with everything you said except one thing. When you said, what the tank isn't wearing first 3, so don't play with them, that's actually truth. I feel it's different for tanks than the other examples you listed. I dipped my feet into 24s this week, and I can say with 100% certainty, tanks need verse, and if you aren't using it, you are someone to not play with. Not because you're doing something fun, but at a certain point, being a detriment to your group matters. Okay, only relevant to 21, 22, so obviously not going to affect most people. But when you get into that area, it's a hard truth. I know it might be straying away from what you said, but it resonated with me. Yeah, fair enough. Your point is valid. Obviously, there's a time when if you make the very worst decision, it's going to massively hinder your ability to progress. But that's not what I meant. What I meant is that if you died in a 24, it's not only because of your gear, right? That was my point. Like, yeah, sure, maybe that's the easiest thing to point at, but realistically, it could be a lot more than that. It could be your group didn't support you on the pack. It could be something was missed, like an interrupt, or you didn't dodge a mechanic. It could be gameplay related. It could be latency related. It could be skill related. It could be a variety of different things. So I just hope people will not continue to blame small min maxing, like, and not that example isn't a small one, but for the covenant system, I hope that they will not continue to blame small min maxing as an element of why they're not succeeding in the game, because it's not the case. Okay. Oh boy, Jesus. Oh my God, this is great. It's gonna be about 4 hours. Okay, iCresp. I've seen this guy a lot now. I feel like there's something missing from a lot of people's comments here. And I know I'm posting on a video supporting the Covenant system, so I'm bound to get disliked, but I'll go anyway. First of all, no dislikes in the comment section. Doesn't work that way. Second of all, I'm not supporting the Covenant system, just giving my thoughts on it. Anyway, something that is super obvious to anyone that dislikes the Covenant system, but seems to be going over a lot of people's heads, is we do not want to be able to change covenants. Wait, what? Even Preach has said this in every video he makes. We want covenants to be something you pick depending on what you see your character as. I'm not going to be able to do that. Let's say, as an example, using someone in my raid group who barely reaches AOTC and has done maybe a 15 in her life. I am a mage and I want to play Venthyr. I like the theme a lot, but as it comes down to abilities, the Venthyr mage ability is nowhere near as powerful as the others. It's also nowhere near as fun as the other abilities. Okay, first of all, if it's not as powerful as the others, first of all, are you sure? Because I think a lot of people, you run a sim, a 5-minute single target sim, and they'll be like, this one's stronger. And then they'll be like, then they say things like, it's nowhere near as powerful as the others. That's just stupid, okay? And then it's nowhere near as fun as the other abilities. I mean, that's just your opinion. Some people might disagree with it. The Venthyr Teleport is also not as strong on Mage as it is on many other classes. I suppose that's true. If I want to be invited to a group, I need to have a decent Radar IO score. Also not true. A thing I wish wasn't the case. Well, it's a terrible scoring system, but it's false. You can just make your own group. I'm going to start doing keys early on, and my DPS is going to be subpar when compared to other mages that have joined. It's going to be hard to find a group to play with, and I'm always going to be the mage that did low DPS. I don't get to pick my covenant based on what I want to pick, but instead what is good. No, you do. You do. That's a choice you're making, and a one based on false pretenses. I am being forced to play a covenant I don't think matches my character. No, you're not. You're not being forced by anybody except idiots. Okay. When I play Venthyr as a mage, it fits what I think my character should be, but I'm having no fun. Then you don't like it. If you're picking it and you don't have fun with it, then it's not the right choice. But first of all, let's go back. Because we're talking about a class ability doing objectively less damage than the other ones. If that's the case, it's a tuning issue, and that can change at any moment in the expansion. So start talking about that instead of all this nonsense about being forced to play a video game a certain way. That is not happening by Blizzard. It's happening by idiots. Stop listening to idiots, okay? I don't know how many more times I could say this. And this is a frustrating comment here, because this guy's acting like I'm missing something. It's like, no. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're just wrong. You just don't understand the situation very well. Anyway, this is usually a lot of people's issue with lowering the restrictions on covenants. They don't want to be forced into a covenant they don't want to play. But this is exactly what is going to happen when the system goes live. What people like myself are asking for is allowing us to play the covenant we want without our power being tied to it, or at least not this drastically. Okay, that's not going to happen. Again, I don't know why people keep saying this, but think about how retarded it would look to be clearly aligned with the Night Fae visually and to be using a Necrolord ability. That's not why they made the system, okay? So I know that's what you want, but it doesn't align with the way they made the system. So that's probably Blizzard's fault because they committed to this, but it's just, I really don't think it's going to happen. It's possible, but it would be like playing an orc as an alliance, right? Like, it just doesn't look right. That's the whole system. It's all about the visual suite and like the lore and the story and the abilities visuals and the sounds and everything that comes with it. It's all one big package, okay? So First of all, they don't want to be forced into a covenant they don't want to play, but this is exactly what's going to happen when the system goes live. I already countered that in the first video that you clearly, like the video you're commenting on, that you probably didn't watch all the way, because that's the opposite. Instead, you pick the one that you want, and then because it's so difficult to change, nobody can force you to change it. But if you had all of them equally, all in a basket, all on a little table in front of you, you can't make the choice that you want, because then they can definitely force you to change it. Then it's like, oh, you literally just press a button to change it. You're an idiot for not doing that. Instead of, oh, you have to spend like 40 hours grinding something to change it. Well, you're an idiot, but we can't stop you. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's very different. And I feel like I'm the only person on the whole planet who feels this way about this. And it uniquely affected me. Before it did, I had the opposite opinion. I understand it. But until you've been through that, maybe it's not going to happen. Like it's not going to click in your brain. But that's how it works. When you have A, B, C, and D, and they're all just one press away, it's no longer about, I really like A. Because then it's like, well, you should have picked D, by the way. D was the correct answer. It's like, oh, no, I liked A. It's like, no. D was the correct answer. Didn't you hear that? It's like, oh, yeah, but I've already picked A. It's like, well, no, then just switch to D. It's the correct answer. It's like, no, but I really like A. It's like, but D is the correct. So when you pick, it's like, well, at birth, I have to choose. Do I want to be a golfer or a basketball player? I chose basketball. Fuck. Then 20 years later, people are like, you should have played golf. And I'm like, yeah, but I spent all my time playing basketball. I guess I'll have to get a little bit better at golf over time. Not a great example. That's what happened to me, though. But anyway, yeah. So it's just like, it's a much harder decision, so nobody can force you to change it. Okay? It's much, much harder for them forcing you to be legitimate. Whereas it's actually like, they can literally force you to do it when it's literally just press a button and switch it. Okay? Anyway. This is usually a lot of people's issues with lowering the restriction. We read this right now, of course. Saying that only the top level players are complaining is just silly. People who are at a higher level are often already in groups. If you're a good player, you've probably found a group of people who will invite you no matter what you pick until you get to high level mythic rating, where everyone can agree the game should not be balanced around. So you're like crossing two topics on top of each other. This has nothing. This is just trolling, honestly. I feel like this is just trolling. You're like, you've crossed both of these topics over each other. It only matters realistically for the people who are at the higher level. It has nothing to do with pugging at that level. So you've taken one side of the argument and kind of jammed it into the other side of the argument that we're not talking about. Those are two very distinct portions of the argument. Anyway, it's harder to find a group at low level sometimes than it is to find a group at higher levels. Right now, I clear 15 keys with no issues, but my OS score is so low, I literally cannot even join a 7 group sometimes. Again, nothing to do with IO. Not a fucking thing to do with IO. Do people not realize that you can only invite 5 people to a group? It's just so crazy that people continue to blame. I mean, come on, man. Anyway, this is a problem the WoW community has had for years, where there are hundreds of ways players could do better DPS, but they will find the current thing the World First players are doing and use that to blame for suboptimal performance, or they will judge you solely on something that is not important whatsoever. Okay, so glad we agree it's not a problem with the game, okay? This is only going to be exacerbated in Shadowlands. It has already begun on the beta, yeah. And again, those people are idiots. Stop listening to them, okay? Players will blame someone's Covenant choice for their poor DPS, or won't invite people for that reason, even though that Covenant is probably fine in a ton of situations. So we seem to be on the same page here. It might not be optimal, but at the level they're doing it, makes absolutely no difference. I'm glad we agree. It's not a problem. This is, again, like, you're expecting Blizzard to like, oh, you knocked over the milk. Oh, you knocked over the milk. I'll clean it up for you. Don't. I'm Daddy Ian. I'll clean it up. I'll clean the milk up. No, you clean the milk up yourself, man. You fix your own problems in life. Come on. A similar thing happened with Azerite gear at the start of BFA. Metro even made a video talking about how Azerite gear wasn't as bad as the people online were saying, and that there was some silent majority that liked it. Wow, okay, so you've been around for a while. First time recognizing the name. The Azerite system started off as a complete dumpster fire, but after the restrictions were lower, it became a system that is somewhat manageable and fun. The same thing is going to happen with Covenants. It would just be great if Blizzard could realize this sooner and save everyone the hassle and potentially set this up. I totally agree. First of all, again, like I said in the original video, they should just change the system now, stop the presses, and change it. Don't think it can happen now. Last time I talked about this, we didn't know the expansions launch. Now we do. Don't think it's on the table anymore. But that's what they should have did. It's the right decision. They're not going to be able to make it. Unfortunately, it's not in any way similar to the Azerite system. The Azerite system sucked because you literally could not access the freaking stuff. It has nothing to do with it. People didn't like it because they like wanted something else. But that they didn't change that. They didn't give us a different system. But one way or the other, the system, the Covenant situation is definitely going to cause problems. Not for the reason everybody seems to think, not for the reason this guy thinks, but they should change it before it can cause problems. And they're not going to be able to now, I don't think, because the expansion is coming out in very little time. Okay, Kapir says, Amen. Amen. Don Coleman, I wish that player power was separate from the cosmetic rewards. I'm going to choose the Covenant that will help me do the content I like the most. I probably won't be able to get the transmog I want. I'm going to be able to do both. Regrettable if you can't, you feel like you can't, but you can, yeah, unfortunately, you have to compromise in some way in life, but hopefully you can get something that you like on both ends. Scott Byers. My whole problem with the Covenant is the power cosmetic theme. I don't like the Night Fae theme. Don't like their armor. Don't like their cosmetics or anything about them. Would never pick them for my Covenant of choice. All I play is Mythic Plus. Now, if they happen to be the best ability for Mythic Plus, I'm going to feel forced to pick them to be the best I can be at Mythic Plus. But you aren't actually forced, so you can still pick the one you want. So now I'm being forced, no, you're not, into picking a Covenant whose theme I don't enjoy or like the appearance of simply for an ability. First of all, the ability will never be that strong. I think a lot of this is predicated on that assumption, and it's just not true. The ability is cool, but there's so many other things in the Covenant itself that are going to make a big difference too. I really would struggle to believe that will happen. It might, and maybe I'm wrong, but regardless, you'll never be forced. Whether you feel like you are, that's something for you to wrestle with. Whether that's Blizzard's problem, I disagree. Again, it's just crazy how many psychological issues there are now with the game. It's like everybody's worried about their feelings, like how they feel about things. It's like, right, but it's almost funny that we battle so hard with the min-maxing crowd and Sims, and then there's the opposite here where it's like, I feel like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, no, mathematically, the relevance of this is zero, right? So it doesn't matter. Whether you feel that or not, it doesn't equate to your success enough to matter. So why are we worried about it? Anyway, it just seems like the whole Covenant ting is going to blow up miserably and do more harm than good. I mean, the game isn't even out yet, and it's already tearing the community apart. It's definitely going to do more harm than good, 100%. That's why I think they should change it. So that we agree on. RCPC Dude. I'm more concerned about 9.1 and 9.2. I'm a casual. I rate heroic, do 15 keys. I also tend to play the tri-spec classes and try to use multiple specs like Druid, Pally, or Monk. I'm worried one Covenant will be terrible for tanking, but great for healing. So playing a multi-class will be kind of crappy for that part of it. I'm also worried that if I change to something different, it's great and I love it, then 9.1 comes out and the inevitable balancing happens, and the Covenant I used to be is now much better for me, for my play, and now I have a hard time switching back. I don't give a fuck about switching daily or between bosses, but I want to know if I switch down the road, I can switch back to it. You can, yeah, that's not going to be an issue. But I totally sympathize with anybody who tries to play like multiple specs actively. It will definitely be hard for them. But again, it won't matter. It sucks. It does suck. That's the one thing I will say. It will not be a lot of fun. It's like, well, I want to play some Frost, but unfortunately I'm forced to use this Covenant ability, which I didn't even know Frost had Death and Decay, so I don't know how that works. I guess they do now. But yeah. Okay, Lush Bits TV. You can't play your off-spec well. You can't do multi-types of content in a maximum way. Those are quite big problems to be not easily fixed though, right? No, because the game isn't the problem there. It's all about the player's feeling or the community's perception. You certainly can play your off-spec well. That one ability is not like, people don't maybe seem to think about this. It's not like I picked something that literally only affects blood, right? Because that happens in some scenarios. If I don't have other trinkets or weapons, I cannot play Frost. All right, that's a bad example because a lot of it's overlapping. But If you played like a Resto Druid and you had a bunch of intellect stuff and you switched to Guardian Druid and you didn't have any other stuff for that, then you cannot, you like actually don't function. You know what I mean? This is not that situation. You can switch from Blood to Frost and you're still like going to be within a few percentage of your maximum potential because they're all 4 spells. They're supposed to be equally balanced. They won't be, but they're going to try. So no, not an issue. Also, which one is the best covenant for Blood DK? Oh, God, not answering that. Anyway, I don't think you fully understand the reason of frustration. I think I understand it more than anybody else on the internet, honestly, which is kind of crazy. But I could be wrong, of course. Very self-centered of me to say that. First of all, I want to have fun in the game, and my fun is not min-maxing. I want to pick Venter, and I will. But sometimes I want to switch to another Covenant, just to have fun playing with another spell. I don't want to fully switch my Covenant, but now Blizzard tells me that I can't do it, because I can't switch back Covenants. Okay, so that's exactly like classes. You played a Death Knight, you chose a Death Knight, I want to pick something else, you can't. You have to pick a new class. You have to have a different class for that. It's exactly how classes work now, not new. Another case, I want to play my Paladin. I think Kyrian ability is the coolest. Thematically, I want to be Necrolord. And in my opinion, the best Soulbind comes with Ventir. So now, no matter what Covenant I choose, I will not have fun playing the game because I can't get what I want. I mean, just don't know what to say anymore. I'm sorry, man. I wish that it wasn't that way. I wish that you were, I don't know, like you cannot be accommodated for, though. Like you have to pick one. Just like, you can't be a professional basketball player, a doctor, and a rocket, like a rocket engineer. Like you can't. You have to specialize in something. It's just like real life, man. This is how it works, man. I don't know what to tell you. If you want to do multiple things, you can level multiple classes and do multiple things with those classes. But anyway. And that is absolutely not necessary for the game. It's just what Blizzard wants, and that is stupid. In that case, my meaningful choice is not play Paladin and pick another class that doesn't have the Covenant problems. Fair enough point. It isn't necessary for the game, but it is what Blizzard wants, and they make the game. So if you don't like it, don't play the game. But realistically, just remember, this is what people ask for. They ask for a very, important choice. They ask for you to be the agent of your character. You know what I mean? To have the agency that everything you do comes through you. Okay, so that's what you got. I see where you're coming from completely, John Smith, and I agree with I agree from someone in your perspective who only has interest in playing one spec of your class. My biggest gripe on this isn't the min-maxing. Fuck those people. They will do it anyway. It's the problem that, for example, something like Abomination Limb might be great for PvP, probably useless for raid, and I've heard for the most part, for Blood with Gorfiends at least, it's meh for Mythic Plus. So now you're running into an issue where just restricting your choice based off one spec, like you mentioned, for pally variances, but also types of content. To be clear, I agree with you that the community perception and percentage of cutting edge will never change or affect people. But not even from a min-max perspective. It will feel bad if I go Necrolord because I think it's the coolest, but the shield ability and the ability I have might as well be taken off my bars. Well, it does damage too. I mean, if we're talking about a purely like utility spell, that would be the case, but that's just not true. It's a very hard hitting ability, so maybe you seem to be misunderstanding the spell. Obviously, the spells are meant to have niches and use cases, so that's intended. Again, sorry if you don't like that. Here's my other massive issue. Would like to get your perspective on this and what's bothering me. Right when I saw Ventir, I was like, damn, that's my Blood Decay Covenant right there. I want that badass wing mantle, the vampire bat, etc. Even the mobility from the Covenant ability looks like a thematic and great complement to the kit. However, from what I'm seeing, Ardenwheel might actually make D&D very good and a fun spell to get resets on, now mixed with Defile talent as well. Do you really want to be a tree man as a DK? I know cosmetically and thematically, it's the last thing I want for my DK. I actually quite like it, yeah. The plate armor looks really good, and I love the zone. It's not my favorite zone, but again, all of these things are weighed together, and I make the decision that makes me the happiest. So if that's, I'm not committed to Night Fae yet, but it does seem like I'll be on that way. Coffee break again. On your analogy with single-player game, that doesn't give credit when you have RPG systems where you can a stealth mage or a magic warrior. You aren't restricted to one playstyle. Don't know what that's about, but honestly, I don't feel like it's relevant to this. Maybe I misunderstood something though. Presimo 7423. Covenants are like Journey back to vanilla WoW. You only had one spec and respecking cost a lot of gold. With years passing, Blizzard added dual specs, then gave us 3 different specs. Why are they now trying to destroy it by forcing us back into one spec? It's beyond me, because this is what people asked for. Ironically, Classic is what people asked for too at some point, and that was a waste of time as well. So maybe this does go down as something that doesn't work out, but yeah, realistically, it's because this is what people asked for, and I don't necessarily agree that this is in any way as restrictive as Classic was. Okay, I remember this guy's icon here. Almost done, guys. Only 4 more hours. You're saying a lot of things that are nonsense. No, I'm not. So why does it break the lore that covenants aren't easily swappable? They're not like factions at all. Because it does. If you look at anything in the expansion, you realize that these zones are very distinct. They're very insular. Like, you cannot, as a soul, you cannot just say like, hey, I don't really align with Bastion anymore. I want to go to Ardenweald. Like, that's not how it works in the lore. Okay. So you picking a covenant is emulating that, is like parallel to that. Anyway, I don't want swappable covenants. I'm not a min-maxer either. I don't think power should be attached to covenants. Makes no sense. Power is attached to a lot of things in the game you'd be surprised about. Make it a cosmetic thing. I'm also not tied to a social situation. I raid Mythic casually, do between 15 and 20 at Mythic Plus, and only hit Rival in PvP. The amount of power attached is the problem. It's not just the flavor of abilities, it's the restriction on playing your class. Again, what they're trying to do is they're trying to flood you with so many different sources of power that it won't actually be restrictive. You'll still be able to, so it's not a straight road, I think is the way to put it. It's not just one direction. You might go left for 2 paces, then you might go right for 4 paces, then you might go, north, I don't know, whatever. Like, you go a couple different directions, and in the end, on this gradient of life, you get to position, say, 7 out of 10. You went all different directions and you got there. Okay? Now, in another covenant, you might go 5 paces to the right first, and then 1 pace to the left, and then another pace to the right, and then back to the left. And you're going to take a different path, but eventually you're going to get there. Now, this time you might have got there. You might have got to 9 of 10, path, like position 9 of 10. You've exceeded the previous path that you took. That might be better mathematically. That's called tuning, okay? What Blizzard wants to do is they want to take, no matter what path you take, you get to the same point. And they're giving you a million different choices. Not a million, but a lot of different choices. So you're not going to be restricted. You're just going to have to make decisions. That's called living. You always make decisions every day you wake up. You don't realize it. You take a lot of them for granted. You're probably only aware of this because somebody else told you should be. Because realistically, I think most people would probably not even spend a second thought on this, especially when they're trying to use words like restricted. Doesn't work that way. Anyway, when you choose a character, you choose a class, not a spec. They tried to go back to class fantasy, but at the same time restrict off-specking by making covenants are hard choice. Right. Well, that's actually why they did it, probably. That's why they went back to class fantasy, because they knew it was going to be tough for off-specking. So it's like, the point is, it's like playing multiple specs should be more similar to each other than they have been in the past. Meaning, like, you shouldn't feel the need to change the entire playstyle from when you switch from Blood to Frost to Unholy. But it's still going to happen, and that's just a flaw of the game. It's a limitation of the game, let's put it that way. They should just tie the abilities to leveling to the zones, and you get to use them outdoor only. Okay, that's certain. I've heard people say that before. I mean, they could have did that, but that would be imagine if they did that in any other expansions. Like, hey, here's the legendaries. They're literally only used for world quests. No thanks. Anyway, one other thing. Those min-maxers you said that aren't playing the game to enjoy it are playing to enjoy. Ever thought that maybe they play because they enjoy min-maxing and being optimal? You would think you would hope that they would, but I've seen a lot of them complain about how difficult it is to be optimal in a game that they're choosing to be optimal in, and I don't really have a lot of respect for that. Again, I should have made a whole video on this years ago, but there's a big famous moment where basically a top guild quit because they said it just took too much effort to be a top guild. It's oh good. You should probably quit then, honestly. Imagine if that was like Tiger was just like just too difficult to be a golfer in 2020. I'm done. It's like, good. That's probably the time to quit then. Anyway, Dana White says it all the time. If a fighter ever thinks he doesn't want to fight anymore, he should never fight again, because that's dangerous. It's different because it's talking about life and death there. But like, if at any point you're questioning why you're doing something, you should stop doing it. It's for the best. Anyway, people like you need to probably accept that people play for different reasons. Oh, I've accounted for that. Trust me, that was all part of the discussion. You thought your perspective was enlightened and wide, but in fact, it just made you look odd. You probably just misunderstood it. Hope one day you can expand your mind with no punctuation. Yes, I hope so. Thank you for the insight. Anyway, Recoil Mojo. Why force us to play one spec? Baffling, not forced. But it is. I definitely agree. It is unfortunate for off-spec stuff. Oh, God. Artsen Miro. I disagree with you mostly, but I want to point out one specific... I disagree with you mostly, but I'm physically attracted to you. No, I didn't say that. I want to point out one specific, and that is optimization. One thing specifically, I guess. I play in a Mythic guild that raids 3 times a week. We are as average as it can be. Well, if it was, you wouldn't raid 3 times a week. We mostly end up in the top 500. This raid tier, the first time in the top 200. Pretty good. That's above average. That's above average. Anyway, we are as average as it can be, and we do not intend to change that. I mean, that's okay, if you say so. We prioritize fun over competition. Top 200 is average. I don't what? Anyway, as long as we end up clearing the content before the new patch, we are happy. However, that doesn't mean we are not trying to do the best at our disposal. Meaning we might have made a conscious decision in playing a class that might not be the meta. However, we're still going to try to play that class as good as we can. Our guild in this shape and form existed since mid-WoD now, and we had our ups and downs like any other guild. Now including far more than 1,000 of wipes in all tiers since Blackrock Foundry up to Nyalotha. And what may not be of concern in heroic raids might absolutely matter in mythic raids, even in our average mythic raid guild. And with dozens of close kills, yet still wiping, there's a group dynamic you are absolutely neglecting. It is one thing to say to a player mate that he can play whatever class he wants, but if one of his specs simply is not performing, we do not tolerate this in our raid, as average as we might be. Okay, you're not average. You could stop saying that now. I mean, first of all, if you were playing with people who you cared about playing with and they wanted to play something, it would be very rude to tell them they can't play that. So that's not the mindset of an average group, right? Anyway. And those reasons have nothing to do with those guilds racing for world firsts are doing, but what is healthy for a group effort. Disagree. It's actually not healthy. It's the opposite. Because now you're isolating that person, making them feel bad for a decision that they made, or maybe even a decision that they didn't make. And now you're putting pressure on them that shouldn't, like, that's you putting pressure on them, not the game putting pressure on them. And that's just going to make them play worse. Ultimately, you're probably either losing a raider or impacting their performance negatively. I struggle with this all the time as a raid leader. It's not easy to overcome, but it is the facts. Anyway, at the end of the day, a mythic raid is still a group effort and not a collective of individuals. I agree. So if we gather up 1 dozen of 1 to 9% wipes on a single boss, this question will be raised why some people are playing specs talents that parse more than 10% worse than other options. Because they want, like, that's the thing, like, because they want to, and it's not why you're wiping. Again, you're wiping because you're playing poorly. People are dying early. They're using their CDs improperly. They're standing in the wrong place. They're lagging. They're desync. Any of the other things. There's no fight in the game since for a long time where it was just a pure, straightforward DPS race. There's none. DPS helps, obviously, makes the fight easier. But this fight is not tuned hard enough for that to be an issue. And again, even the 10% worse than other options thing is like, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I'm sure it happens, but I think it's really overblown. Anyway, we don't expect, and just because theoretically it looks like it's 10% worse does not mean realistically it's 10% worse. That's my point, okay? And I know people are going to comment on that. That's my point. Just because it looks like in a sim that it's 10% better does not mean that when you use it, it's going to be 10% better, okay? Because you might make mistakes with it. It might be harder to use than the other thing. It might require a different positioning situation. It might require different stats or something like that, okay? We don't expect a DPS to do orange parses, but when he does only blue parses and could easily improve by changing just 1 or 2 talents for that specific fight, we are asking him why he chose to play the way he did. Right. And if it's because I really identify with it and I'm trying my best, then he made the right choice. If it's because I'm inexperienced and I need to improve, then you help him improve. You don't force him to do anything. You know what I mean? Anyway, this is total normal. If you have a player in a raid that plays a pure AoE build in a single target fight, everyone would raise this question. Right. Because you're talking about something that is easily fixable, easily changeable. But if the class was an AoE class, you know what I mean? And it was valuable in one place, but not valuable in another place, you're not going to raise this question. You're going to be like, well, he's here for the other fight. It's like, why do you have a designated hitter in baseball? He doesn't play the field, but he's there to hit. So when you're playing, you're like, why is this guy even on the roster? He doesn't play the field. He's there to get hits. He's there to hit home runs. There's specialties in life. Okay, that's one of them. But when you can switch your specialty on a dime, when that guy could change from the Garrett Cole to Mike Trout, it's like, well, what's the point of having a specialty then? There's no point. You just pick the best thing for the situation, and there's no decisions involved at all. You let somebody else make the decision for you because of math and variables, and then the decision is made for you, and you just press the button and make it yourself. Okay, anyway, here comes the covenants. I cannot change covenants on a boss-to-boss basis, but that doesn't mean I can choose whatever I want. Wait, what? I cannot change covenants on a boss-to-boss basis, but that doesn't mean that I can choose whatever I want. For that, the covenants just differ too much. You might not see this from a tank's perspective, but from a DPS perspective, we are talking double-digit performance differences. Again, are you sure? 100% sure that in every realm of the game, it's going to be double-digit performance differences? I doubt it. But if it is, it's just a tuning problem. So show Blizzard the facts, which you apparently have collected, and they will try to fix the facts. Okay? Anyway. And in those scenarios, there is no choice. And most importantly, definitely not for those who are going to look for a new raid, because they have to make themselves as attractive as possible while on longer raid mates we might tolerate a little bit more. That's a fair point. That's actually a decent point. But that's, again, just toxic guild recruitment. I hate that as a guild leader, where people are like, well, what's your parses? It's like, you don't want to get to know me as a person? No, I'm only interested in your parses. Anyway, there's just too much of a difference with the covenant abilities with regards to raid performance. So at least in our guild, we are expecting players to pick the covenant that will probably work the best at a mythic raid scenario, because choosing a covenant is not like choosing a class. It's trying to be. That's it. That's the end of it. It's not the same, but it is. That's what they're trying to do. Okay, so that's what they're trying to do. I don't know. Like, you wrote all that and you still don't get it. I don't get it. What's left here? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make another big, important decision that you could identify with long term. Yaruga Nick, it would be nice if you could do something like mercenary contracts with a progress bar like rep almost, with the drawback that your covenant abilities would get a small debuff for balancing reasons. For other covenants to get a small, less powerful slice of their cake, it would definitely make the choice easier. Just me thinking out loud. Yeah, the goal here is not to make the choice easier, I think. Again, like we've said, that's not what they're after here. They're trying to make a choice that's actually a difficult choice that you have to care about which one you make, and you're going to think about it a lot, and you're going to make one that has lasting impact on who you are as a player. So certainly there's better ways to fix it. If they want to change that, there's better ways to fix it than that. Although it's a cool concept. You could have like a second covenant, kind of like on your off spec, like in the old days. You could have multi-specs. Like it wasn't like it is now. You can just switch, press a button, and change. It used to be like you had to have one spec loadout. So if you wanted to be a frost mage and a frost mage with two different talent sets, you can do that, but that was it. If you wanted to be a fire mage, you had to respec one of them. You had to pay to do that. So it could work. Okay, Chris, long time no see. How you been? My only concern with Covenant system is this. I want to play a Destruction Warlock with the Necrolord Covenant, and it's currently the best synergy. Now, 4 months down the line, Blizzard nerfs Necrolord to the ground. Now I don't have a real choice anymore but to switch. IMO, what I think Blizzard should try to do is balance the Covenant powers down to being equivalent to class racial balancing, where it's roughly 1% of each other. This way, the Covenant powers are there, but give players the option to choose the Covenant they truly want to be a part of. So you want them to be useless, basically. I don't think that's going to be happening. And certainly, I don't like. A couple of people have said this, like nerf them to the ground and shit. It's like, well, why would you? What do you think they're going to do that for? If one's strong, then they'll tune everything around it, but it's not like it's going to be useless. I just don't think this is a real concern. And I certainly would not want them to make the abilities really, really bad, all four of them, just so nobody cares at all about it. There's better ways to solve it, for sure. Then Keister says, this is my biggest concern. Also, I think Blizzard knows this and why they had the test so early. It will most likely still happen with numbers tuning. Philosophically speaking, when a decision is in front of you, the weight of that decision is measured by its benefits/consequences. The greater the benefit, the harsher the consequence, the deeper the meaning behind that decision. When you minimize the damage/output between the abilities, the more you strip away the meaning because consequence and benefits have been reduced. Yeah, either way. Certainly they're not going to make the abilities do nothing. That's not the point of the system. It is supposed to give you power. So, okay, another reply. Then Blizzard needs to make a decision on what they want covenants to be. They've done that already. It's just the players who haven't, like, the decision's been made on Blizzard. Then it's just the players just don't like the decision. You know what I mean? We all know that they can't balance the powers. They can give it a best try, and they don't need to. That's the thing. Like, did they balance every corruption? Did they balance every essence? No. There's always going to be ones that have obvious use cases in certain scenarios. And over time, if some are not viable, they will change that. But that's not like that. At least not for the tanks that I've seen. I haven't looked at DPS. Somebody said that earlier. Very possible that DPS is different. But for tanks, I could see a use case for all four of them for Blood EK. There's really only one that I feel like is completely useless, and it's on Bear, which is unfortunate because Bear is a bit of a problem anyway, but there's some really cool stuff there. Anyway, so either Blizzard needs to decide if the powers are going to be the selling point for the Covenant choice and make them strong and expect players to change between Covenants when they nerf other powers. Again, I don't know where this presupposition is that you know they're going to get nerfed. Like, let's not do that. That's a bit, you're putting a very unfair situation into play here. Like, you think that you're going to pick something and it's going to be nerfed. Like, I don't know. Like that's a very negative viewpoint, right? Like, it can happen, of course, but like to assume that it's going to happen before you even do it, and then to assume that they're going to offer like no recourse, you know what I mean? It's like, relax. It's not that serious. If they nerf it or something like that, it's not like they're going to nerf it from like 100 to 0 anyway. Anyway, or reduce or remove the powers from covenants and put them somewhere else. I should have read that all together. As an example, maybe bring back the old relic slot that Paladin, Shaman, Druids had in Classic, and move the Covenant powers to a relic that the players can acquire from content. This way, if the powers are nerfed, they can switch between the powers. Which, yes, this is a terrible idea, but I'm glad you agree. And make Covenants just a faction in the game. Yeah, this is what they're doing for sure. They're not going to fundamentally change what Covenants are. It's just the main concerns is, how are they going to keep it fair for people who like to play alts a lot? And how are they going to keep them balanced? How are they going to keep them tuned well? Because there's so many things in the tuning process for the system that, yeah, it's bound to be rocky. It's just like corruption, right? You can easily point to corruption and say, well, Echoing Void got nerfed, like, what was that, like a 200% nerf? It was a very, very, very big nerf. And then other things got buffed. So if somehow you felt like you had committed all your resources to Echoing Void, that was the name, right? Echoing Void, and then after they nerfed it, you felt spurned. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But you could also look at it in saying that within 1 week of the patch being out, of the raid, progression happening, they managed to fix that for the next 10 months or whatever it is, right? So like this whole like, I'm going to get really committed to this thing and then randomly 4 months from now, it's going to be useless. I mean, there's just no precedent for that. I mean, I guess there is in some scenarios. Like, I'm sure people will find ways to make that real, but it's just a very pessimistic way to look at it. Like that you're living your whole life and you're worried, about something that might never even happen. So just don't worry about that. That's just not worth your worry. There's a lot more real problems that we should discuss instead. Anyway, Gonza55. So if I understand correctly, your opinion is that people that think min-max is fun for them and they think it's unfair for them, while you don't seem to care about min/max or even your off specs like you did say. While at the same time, the current system doesn't allow for min-max having a negative impact on the community and being neutral to you because you won't be affected by it. This is not a great comment. Not well written. While at the same time, if they change it the way you can swap it or have it in a talent tree, there will be zero downsides because, well, that's fucking obviously not. Why do people like just lie about shit? I literally spent 40 minutes explaining the system and then people say there's zero downsides. No. I already explained the downsides in the first video. Why don't you go watch that? The comment that you're leaving is on that video, by the way. Because the min-max people will be happy and the people that never cared for it to begin with will still be neutral because they don't care and won't affect them from having legit zero downside. Okay, this pisses me off, honestly. You can't even use punctuation properly and you're just completely trivializing the whole video. Like, that's what the fucking video is about. It's about the ups and downs of the system. And you're trying to act like they made an objectively poor decision. That in every possible way, the alternative to the system is better. Oh my god, man. This community is composed of people that I do not want to be around. Very frustrating. Anyway, Faxy's here. What's up? I think they should be interchangeable for one reason and one reason only. One might be great for Raid, and one might be great for Mythic Plus. And having to choose between which one you go with now kind of sucks. But I also think there should be a CD to it. Whether it be one day or every time you do it, it adds 12 hours or something to the CD. With the CD, yeah, I totally agree with Faxy here. This is the way I would solve it. I'm glad this is one of the last comments we read because this is how I would solve it. I would just make the ability to change covenants not like a permanent problem. Like, let's put it this way: if you change the covenant more than once a day, it's extremely difficult. But if you change it once a month, it's extremely easy. That's what I would like to see. Right now, they're going for an approach where you have the option to pick any of the 4 covenants, and if you choose you didn't like that one, you could pick any of the other 3 very easily. Then you chose that you didn't like that one, you pick any of the other 2 that you haven't picked yet very easily. But if you want to go back to the first one, it's going to be very hard, apparently. We still don't know. So the fact that it's not in the game when it's coming out in 7 weeks is that means it's a really big decision, and they probably haven't decided exactly what they're doing yet. But one way or the other, the idea that Faxy has laid out here is the one that I would say is the solution. So don't do any of this nonsense where you're trying to combine Venthyr and Necrolord and isolate the cosmetics from the power and all this, because the power is not isolatable. People keep saying this. It's almost like the only thing people think is coming with this covenant system is the actual ability. And it is kind of scary how many people are talking about the actual ability being powerful and not. When you have soulbinds and the conduit tree is like, it seems so huge to me. Like, I mean, let's put it this way. There's been traits that have done more healing than actual class spells, and they're not coming from the conduit, or they're coming from the soulbind, They're not coming from the actual ability. So, I mean, for some of the abilities I looked at, it's almost impossible to even measure them. So how will anybody even know if they're outperforming it? You know what I mean? Like, in game, you won't even be able to tell. So that's how Blood Decays is for Night Fae. So anyway, I totally agree with them. You make it so it's extremely difficult to switch frequently, but just like in Classic with talents, it resets every month or whatever it might be, whatever the period of time is. Every so often, it completely, like, it's very, very, very easy to change again. But then, you have the opposite side of that too, where, in the current system, you can change somewhat frequently, maybe. And it's like consistent, like, so what you're going to do, what you have to do to change. Whereas in this system, it's like, well, I'm just going to wait. It's going to be better than trying to change now. So it's not a perfect solution. Let me know what you guys think about that. That would actually be something I would like to talk about more. What the real solution is for this. My original solution, which is very, very likely no longer viable, is to just redo the system, basically redesign covenants. Now that we know the game's coming out in very few weeks, That's obviously not going to happen. So what can they do? I think this is the way. Whatever that penalty is, say it's like you have to collect 200 cloth, okay? Well, make it so it's like 6,000 cloth if you're switching once a day. And if it's, once a month, it's 6 cloth, something like that. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like something scalable is my point. Okay. Fizgardivga as says, I agree with a lot of what you said, but your WoW socialism comment at the end I disagree with. People don't come to a video game to have genetics level disadvantages. People come to video games so they can be dealt a fair hand. Life is already unfair enough. It doesn't need help from video games. Also, to touch on your corruption comparison, yes, people had to make hard choices based on what they got, but it feels pretty bad when you play the same game to the same level as someone else and you are at a much lower power level than them. There has always been a discrepancy, say, if you couldn't get a weapon or trinket to drop, but corruption took that feeling and made it exponentially worse. Maybe I'm a baby, but I can't be the only with a pit in my stomach thinking about a system like that. Well, it's not like it's returning, but yeah, you are a baby, honestly. The thing about corruption was they were terribly balanced. Like you could have told that, you could have seen that well beforehand, and they just didn't really act on it quick enough. Um, and again, fair criticism is to say that this might be the same case with covenants. But first of all, there's way more to balance than there was corruptions. Corruptions, there was really only 3 or 4 that they ever needed to look at. It's obviously the ones that dealt damage based on your HP pool. Those are the only ones that ever needed to be really looked at. And gushing wounds. Those are the only ones that ever needed to be really looked at. Because there was already detriments for the other one, like the whole stacking stat one. Even though it's looked at as crazy now, if it wasn't for the corruption vendor, that never would have been crazy. Infinite stars gets nerfed every week, right? You know what I mean? Like there's things that were going to balance themselves out over time with some of these other ones. But those ones were the opposite. They were going to get stronger over time. So those were the only ones that ever needed to be looked at, and they just failed to look at them. With covenants, there's a lot of friggin' options. Somebody said 48. I don't know if that's the right number, but there's a lot of friggin' options, and it's probably unlikely that it's going to be perfect at launch. Obviously, it is unlikely, but the fact is, they're trying a lot harder, and that's why I keep saying you got to give them the time, because this was a system that was given to us months ago. Okay, and not everybody had access to the alpha. And even now, a lot of people still don't have access to the beta, but it was a system that's been being tested for months. Like I'm talking about, this was being tested. I still had a job, pretty much. I mean, that was a long time ago. It wasn't that. It was like, I think it was like early May, the beta came out, but that was a long time ago, man. A lot's changed in the last 5 months or whatever it's been. So I don't know. I think that they're giving it the best effort they can. You know what I mean? But anyway, the WoW socialism comments. Let's read this. People don't come to a video game to have genetics level disadvantages. Well, unfortunately, they do. That's what an MMORPG is. If they didn't want that, they'd be playing like a first person shooter or something like that, where you literally play the same character regardless. The give and take is part of an RPG. It's a role playing game for a reason. They have roles that have variance. You know what I mean? Not everybody's playing a mage. It's all different. So like maybe you just didn't understand. I understand why you didn't understand. Because the word genetics sounds like it's unfair. That's what you're probably thinking I mean by that word. And maybe even you think that with the word socialism. But to me, I think the opposite. I think like genetics is like the most fair. You know what I mean? Because like there's this give and take here where for the most part, it's something that you could trace. Like we should not get into this here, but regardless, what I mean to say is that like, for a lot of people, not everybody, okay, bad example to give in some cases, but for a lot of people, you get a little bit of this and a lot of this. You get none of this and a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're just completely genetically bereft. Like there are some people out there, right? Some couple people like Matthew Collins, genetically bereft. But no, it's not always the case. Unfortunately, it's stupid to even be saying this out loud. But you know what I mean. Like, you have your ups and downs as a person, and so do you in a video game. So you could say people come to video games so they can be dealt a fair hand, but that's just not true. What they can be dealt equally is choice. That's what you get when you play an RPG. You are the role player. You get to choose what role you play. Just like with the covenant system, you get to choose your covenant. That's what you get. You do not get a fair hand. You cannot play a mage and a warrior at the same time. Probably one of the reasons why you can't be logged on to more than one character at the same time, too. So anyway, that's a good comment, though. And the final one here, Mr. Riddles McGee. A couple people with the name Riddles. It's funny. I respect your opinion, but I do not see how it is fair for you to say that people who want to raid, dungeon, and PvP and potentially play two roles aren't playing for enjoyment, but only for some social obligation. Yeah, I didn't say that. If I did, if you read that, I apologize. What I'm trying to say is that people who are like so bent out of shape about this are usually not for the right reasons. And to be fair, a lot of people in that situation are probably in the situation I'm describing. If somebody's doing that much in the game, there's a pretty good chance that they're not doing all of it because they enjoy it. Like honestly, I know a lot of people who raid, I know a lot of people who do dungeons, and I know some people who do PvP. But I don't think I know anybody who does all three at a very high level. Ironically, there's been some people in the comment section who claim to be doing so, but for the most point, I don't know anybody. I don't know a single person who does all three at a high level. And that's usually because you don't enjoy all three. And I think a lot of people who do all three, they think they're doing it because they need to, and they think they need to because of some social obligation, some external pressure that people around them are placing on them, whether that be in their guild, whether that be on Twitch or something else. Like, let's put it this way. If everybody in Method was all trying to get Gladiator, then you'd see a lot more people doing PvP. That's my point. Do you understand what I'm saying there? It's not like some... I just think you misunderstood the point, what I mean by the social side of things here. I'm just talking about, how people perceive the reality of what is and isn't needed in this game is heavily influenced by people they watch or people they talk to. And then it turns into this really toxic scenario where if you're not doing what the general consensus seems to think you should, then you're bad, or you're actively shirking your duties or something. This actually happened with Method. Yeah, Sko went on vacation. GM of the top guild in the world at the time went on vacation and came back and did not have his neck as high as everybody else in the guild. And this was like a really big deal. Like, this was a big deal in the guild. I don't know how big it was because obviously they're going to downplay any stuff like this, but it was, something that got brought up. So I'm sure it was a big deal. And then more so, this was a big deal for the comments on Twitch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people were talking about that forever. And I think if Method didn't get the world first that tier, they'd probably still be talking about it, because this is how like petty and vitriolic some social circles have become. It's like, so the guy who has led the guild for however long now, 10 years or whatever it's been, and has been through the ringer. I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that dude's position now, especially after what's happened. It's so terrible for him. But I can't even imagine what it'd be like, that pressure on you, just because the guy played 60 hours a week on average instead of 70 or 80 hours a week on average. He's no longer qualified to raid with that. It's like, you're nobody. Who are you? Who are you, like, what I mean? It's like, just mind your own business. It's like, just watch the sport or don't. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I mean by that. Okay, so anyway, you're playing a class where each of the Covenant abilities looks fairly equally useful from spec to spec and role to role. Though one is obvious, the PvP death grip choice. So any DK that likes that look but wants to raid will be sad. You should try some PvP healing as a Kyrie and Shami and see how useful that kit feels when your class ability is a 5 HP totem. What is your balancing solution? Again, it's not... That's all anybody brings up is the ability, isn't it? So the balancing solution is there's a lot more than just the fucking single ability that you get. And the other balancing solution is use the spell better. I mean, I don't know what it is, a 5 HP totem, but maybe they just make the totem have more health in PvP. Sounds like a pretty good balancing solution too, if that's your problem. I don't know anything about the situation. All I know is it's a lot more than just a single totem, and it's a lot more than just for PvP. You're going to use that everywhere in the game. So I have no idea. but I think it's pretty clear to say that you're taking this one very specific example as like the catch-all for the reason that there's problems is the exact problem here. It's just not the case. There's way too many situations and way too many circumstances inside covenants for it to be a universally bad decision. It's just not how it works. Anyway, make it have a player's level of HP and infinite range. Is it still a totem then? Them? Is it still a totem them? I don't know. How do other totems work in PvP? I don't know anything about Shaman. I don't know why you'd bring this up. But anyway, I think that's everything. So very, very long video. I really enjoyed doing stuff like this. We had a lot of great comments on this video, honestly. I saw a lot of them. We skipped only a few, but I do regret doing that. I was originally thinking I was going to be able to do this in one sitting, and then it just got out of control, so I had to take a break. But yeah, we had a good chat. Hope to see some of you guys in this video. I'm going to have a timestamp with every comment that I replied to and every time that it happened in. So hopefully that'll be easy to navigate and you guys can enjoy that. But otherwise, I love getting into conversations like this because for the most part, it's very rewarding. There's only one or two comments that I feel like is really frustrating. Like some of these guys who are they just don't seem to get it. Like the big thing for me is like when I lay out 40 minutes worth of opinion and then people act like I didn't do that. Like it's like they heard me, but they just don't care what I'm saying. It's like, well, then why would we have a conversation? Like some of these comments were like, if I literally didn't say any of the words I said, if all I said was covenants are good. And then like, so if I understand you correctly, you think covenants are good. It's like, yeah, sure. All right. So anyway, thanks for watching. I look forward to continuing the discussion and covering it. I'm sure there'll be some big things to cover in the future. But for now, that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.